It is absolutely insane how much Rockstar pushes the envelope when releasing new titles in their Grand Theft Auto series. GTA 3 was an open world crime game that was monumental on the PlayStation 2, that was leaps and bounds better than the first games in the series. And then they one-upped that game twice on the same console with Vice City and San Andreas, with the latter being one of the most densely packed games that I've played, and the fact that they did that on a single PlayStation 2 disc is just unreal. And then they ravished the handheld market with Liberty City and Vice City Stories on the PlayStation Portable, again pulling no punches when it came to making an optimized game that made no compromises. All of that, by the way, was just in the span of like 5 years for all of those games from 2001 to 2006. Still, their most impressive, envelope-pushing, cusp of technology release in the franchise has to be the one that they released in 2008, 2 years after Vice City Stories, which looked like this, to move on to this. Simply titled Grand Theft Auto 4. The game didn't need any flashy subtitles. It was a defiant new entry in the franchise, similar to how Grand Theft Auto 3 re-established the series on new hardware and revamped the idea of the game from the ground up. GTA 4 sought to do the same thing, donning itself numerically as the true follow-up to 3, the next generation. And like the foundations to the 3D universe, this new HD universe starts in none other than Liberty City. GTA 4 revolves around Niko Bellic, an Eastern European war veteran that's developed a cynical view on life from all the horrors that he's been subjected to. He decides to leave whatever ambiguous country he's from and immigrate to America, to Liberty City, in search of the American dream, something pitched to him many times by his cousin, Roman, who lives there and runs a successful taxi business. But Niko also uses this move to escape his dark past, where he was made to do some unspeakable things, and also find someone who betrayed him and his former units in war, who he believes has also fled to Liberty City. Not all is as it seems though. When Niko arrives, Roman isn't living the life of luxury as his communications seem to have led on. The taxi company that he runs is failing, he's drowning in debt, and the loan sharks and gangsters he's indebted to are constantly harassing him. Niko finds himself in a tough spot. While Liberty City certainly is better than a war-torn country, he isn't living any sort of dream either. He gets roped into the seedy underworld of the city, working for shady figures, mobsters, drug dealers, and corrupt officials, using the only skills that he has to do everything from hits to bank heists. Getting into this shadowy business isn't just out of necessity to make it by, but it's where he needs to go to get the contacts that he needs for his own personal vendetta as well, to track down the traitor who led to the deaths of his comrades back in war. GTA 4 is a deeper look at characters, at social situations, and at the implications of violence than ever before seen in the Grand Theft Auto series, exploring themes like revenge, disillusionment, immigrant struggles, and the cost of participating in the vicious cycle of violence, all wrapped up in the typical Rockstar satirical look at American culture and society. It's a much darker and more grounded story than the previous games, trading some of the over-the-top chaos for a more personal and emotional story, but not losing that same urban sandbox feel that really made the series what it is. You can go from a hard-to-watch, brilliantly acted cutscene bleeding with emotion, and then go right ahead and mow down some pedestrians with a sports car in Times Square, or jump from a chopper ragdolling in the middle of Central Park. It really is still a Grand Theft Auto game, but narratively it is much more serious and dark. The development of Grand Theft Auto 4 was a massive undertaking that actually began in late 2004, immediately after the release of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Rockstar Games faced the daunting challenge of following up the absolute blockbuster that game was. Rockstar president Sam Houser even admitted that trying to top San Andreas was a nightmare. The best way to get it done was to revamp the series from the engine up. In November of 2004, preliminary work on a new project began, marking the start of what Rockstar internally saw as the HD era of Grand Theft Auto. The team returned to numbering the game with 4 to signal this major leap forward, similar to the jump from Grand Theft Auto 2 to Grand Theft Auto 3. And to facilitate this leap, Rockstar created a brand new engine, the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, otherwise known as Rage. Rage elevated the realism in the gameplay and allowed for far more detailed urban environments. With the new tech on the horizon, that is the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, the developers could implement advanced physics and graphics that simply weren't possible on earlier hardware options. One of the standout technical innovations was the integration of Natural Motion's Euphoria physics system. Early on, some at Rockstar doubted if Euphoria could run during normal gameplay. They thought that it might only work in some scripted cutscenes, but a few determined engineers proved that it could be done, and Natural Motion even sent some staff to Rockstar North's studio for months to help blend the Euphoria system into the game's engine. The result was dynamic, unscripted character animations. Pedestrians stumble, grab onto car doors, or flail when thrown, making the world feel more reactive and alive. This focus on physics fed into Grand Theft Auto 4's gameplay design, giving weight and believability to everything from shootouts to car crashes. Everything has a significant weighty feel to it, and it just feels right. As one developer put it, if the difference from GTA 2 to 3 was 3D, then this time it was going from low def to high def. What that meant was detail. Everything has to be insanely detailed. The graphics, animations, behaviors, dialogues, and artificial intelligence. Achieving this level of detail required a huge team and even larger budget. Rockstar North, based in Edinburgh, remained the core studio with around 220 people, but they pulled in help from Rockstar Studios around the world. Over 1,000 people contributed in total. Some team members were working 12-hour days without holidays to get this game done, a classic tale of development crunch that Rockstar is notorious for at this point. The total development cost of this project climbed above $100 million, making Grand Theft Auto 4 one of the most expensive games ever. The overall vision, however, was clear. Rockstar wanted to push boundaries in realism and storytelling, even if it meant a tonal shift from the lighter, more satirical vibe of the previous generation. On the gameplay side, the designers essentially rebuilt core systems from scratch so that GTA 4 would feel next generation. For example, gunplay was significantly overhauled. The team made the targeting and shooting mechanics a top priority in early development, leveraging the new tech to make combat feel more authentic and less clunky. They implemented a cover system for the first time in the series, letting players snap to cover and engage in more realistic firefights, and this was considered a natural addition once they had a more realistic targeting system. They also ditched some of the prior game's RPG-like mechanics. In San Andreas, players could get ripped at the gyms or overflow with calories and confidence off fast food, but Rockstar dropped these elements early in Grand Theft Auto 4's development. Dan Houser explained that constantly lifting weights or managing stats felt antithetical to Nico's motivations. Given that Nico Bellic is a battle-hardened immigrant not preoccupied with vanity or physique. And there's probably an inside joke somewhere when they were making Brucey, as he is the complete opposite of that. Streamlining these features not only fit the narrative better, but it saved massive animation work. No need to render Nico getting fat or ripped, and kept the focus on the story and core gameplay. Another big feature that showed the times changing was the in-game cell phone. The team introduced a cell phone for Nico that served both narrative and gameplay functions. Friends could call to hang out, missions could be triggered by text, and players could even dial numbers for side activities, call 911, or even Easter egg phone numbers. This phone mechanic added to the immersion of living in Liberty City, and cleverly mirrored the real-world shift towards constantly being connected. On top of that, GTA 4 included things like an in-game internet with parody websites that you could browse at cyber cafes. But like the phone, also functioned as a way to get jobs and even girlfriends in-game. And also the game had functional TVs with spoof programs, all small gameplay touches that enriched this idea of a real modern city around you. Rockstar also ventured into online multiplayer for the first time in a main Grand Theft Auto game. They had some minor multiplayer back on the PSP titles, but nothing like this. According to producer Leslie Benzies, getting multiplayer to work in an open world city was the hardest part of development. They wanted the multiplayer to feel like an extension of the single player experience rather than a task tacked on mode. Ultimately, Grand Theft Auto 4 shipped with a robust set of multiplayer modes. Cops and robbers, races, death matches, free roam, all the good stuff. For up to 16 players on consoles, and even 32 players on the later PC version. It was a significant technical achievement to synchronize so many players in a big streaming city with pedestrians, traffic, and police AI still running properly. Cooperative play in the main story was briefly considered but ultimately dropped, as the designers felt the narrative flowed best in a single player mode. Dan Houser described their approach to multiplayer as making it feel like a section of a film rather than the whole narrative, meaning it captured a slice of GTA's cinematic chaos without trying to be a second storyline. All these advancements, the new engine, physics, improved combat, interconnected world technology, and even online play show how Grand Theft Auto 4's development was as much about technological progress as it was about creative vision. Rockstar's goal was to immerse players in a believable city and story that could stand toe-to-toe with movies and television. Dan Houser reflected in an interview, "We're not really against moving properties between different media, but for Grand Theft Auto, it just seems so perfect as a video game," emphasizing that games can be as culturally relevant as movies when executed with this level of detail and care. By early 2008, after roughly 3.5 years of work, development on Grand Theft Auto 4 was finally completed. The game was officially declared ready for manufacturing on April 21st, and it was a wrap on one of the most ambitious projects gaming had seen up to this point. If GTA 4 had a main character beyond Niko Bellic, it was Liberty City itself. From the outset, Rockstar wanted to create an open world city that felt like a living, breathing place, on par with the real New York City that inspired it. This meant reinventing their prior Liberty City from scratch, not just updating the GTA 3 layout. In fact, the team deliberately avoided looking at the previous renditions of Liberty City, keeping only a general East Coast vibe, but otherwise starting fresh. Art director Aaron Garbert said that they chose New York because of its amazing density and variety. He called it an amazing, diverse, vibrant, cinematic city that offered plenty of inspiration, and really anyone who spent any time in the city knows what he's saying. Early in planning, they considered ambitiously using the entire state of New York, including upstate areas and small towns, but that idea was soon trimmed down to just the urban core. First Manhattan only, and then expanding outward to include Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and part of New Jersey, under fictional names of Algonquin, Broker, Dukes, Bohan, and Alderney. The designers had debates and even votes on which areas to include or cut, and they also toyed with including more suburbia or wooded areas, but ultimately decided to keep the map focused and tightly packed with city life, which is too bad because I can see a hilarious mission spin on the Sopranos episode Pine Barrens. However, they learned from mistakes on San Andreas' overly ambitious map design. Dan Houser noted that they wanted less dead spots and irrelevant places, like the sprawling countryside of San Andreas. While a cool addition to that game, it really didn't offer much in the way of content and seemed more like filler. GTA 4 would be a more focused and detailed urban experience. As a result, Liberty City ended up smaller in total square mileage than San Andreas' map, but because it's so dense and vertically built, the team felt it was comparable in scope, if not larger. As Dan put it, it's the biggest city we ever built, but it's not the biggest area. Rockstar's philosophy was to capture the essence of New York City, not to produce a GPS-accurate clone. The team selectively condensed and exaggerated landmarks and neighborhoods to create a caricature of the city, one that hits the recognizable highlights but is fun to navigate as a game world. The level designers actually built the city first with no gameplay in mind and only later plugged in the missions and activities. And this is opposite to some games where levels are built around missions. In GTA 4, they wanted Liberty City to feel like a real place that missions then utilize organically, which made doing anything outside of scripted missions just feel more real. To get the details right, Rockstar went to extraordinary lengths in research. In early 2005, a team of 60 to 70 Rockstar North developers flew from Scotland to New York City for an intensive research trip. For over a week, they fanned out across neighborhoods, taking thousands of photos, video footage, and jotting observations. They even rode around with NYPD officers in certain districts, like Washington Heights, to learn about local crime and the general vibe of those areas as well. Later in development, another small research trip in 2007 helped update references and gather anything that they missed. And back at headquarters, Rockstar installed TV monitors that constantly played B-roll of New York City streets, so artists could literally glance up from their desks and be in New York City while crafting Liberty City. According to Leslie Benzes, they took over 100,000 photographs on location, though Aaron Garberts, head of development at Rockstar North, notes that it might have been closer to 250,000 photos. They collected architectural blueprints for buildings and apartments to inspire interior designs. They used satellite maps to trace road layouts, they studied traffic patterns, and even researched mundane infrastructure like subway schedules, sewer systems, and garbage disposal logistics to ground the city in reality. And you know, when you get YouTubers to make a video about how awesome your world functions on a logistical level, you've done something right. Shout out Any Austin. It ran deep too. Dan Houser stated in a Vulture interview, "We had guys looking at census data. This part of Queens should be more Chinese population. The pedestrians can go up to speak to each other now, so we got them speaking Russian, Spanish, Chinese, etc., depending on what neighborhood they are in." And yeah, pedestrian AI and variety became a point of pride. Rockstar populated the sidewalks of Liberty City with a huge selection of NPC models and dialogues. There are office workers, hustlers, tourists, drunks, street vendors, joggers, and countless more, all with their own little routines. Some NPCs even recognize each other and start chatting on the street. The game ended up featuring 660 separate speaking characters, delivering over 80,000 lines of dialogue, from mission characters to random pedestrians, which is absolutely insane. I mean, just look at the script size from GTA 3 to GTA 4. But it paid off in making the city feel alive. As you wander around Liberty City, you constantly overhear snippets of conversations or crazy rants. The development team drew on their real New York experiences, where walking around you're meeting insane people on every corner. To reinforce this idea, some of these crazy pedestrians rambling on the street corner are actually approachable and turn into random character encounters. Optional side meetings with eccentric personalities that Nico can stumble upon. Everything from a crazy husband who thinks his wife is cheating on him, to drug addicts trying to buy the biggest rock ever, to a straight up serial killer. Come here! Huh. These were inspired by actual oddballs that the Housers had met in New York City. For example, Dan Houser recounts running into a homeless man who claimed that he just killed somebody, and that encounter helped fuel the idea that the player should randomly meet freaky, memorable strangers in the game. And again, anyone who's spent any length of time in the city has an experience like this. A few years ago, I had some dude tell me real nonchalantly that he just shit on the stairs that led up to the Brooklyn Bridge path. He just calmly told me to stick to the left side and I'll be alright. Sure enough, there was a massive pile of shit on the right side of the stairs, and there was already a shoe print in it, but shoutouts to him for letting me know. From an art direction standpoint, GTA 4 strove for a grittier, more realistic style than from the more cartoonish aesthetics of the previous games. Textures and models were far more detailed thanks to the new engine and the move to high-definition consoles. The lighting system was overhauled to mimic real city light. Rockstar even set up time-lapse cameras on New York City rooftops to study how the sunlight and streetlights changed the look of the buildings throughout the day and night. They paid attention to the subtle details of dirt on buildings, graffiti and alleyways, the hologram-like shimmer of the neon lights at night, and all sorts of little mundane things that help design the look of the city throughout different times of day. Weather and time of day effects in Liberty City were designed to feel authentic as well. Misty dawns on the Humboldt River, golden hour between the skyscrapers, torrential rain slicking the streets at different times. All these artistic touches reinforce Liberty City as a believable place. The team also spent years developing fake brands and advertisements to fill the city. By the time of release, nearly every billboard and storefront in Liberty City had a humorous spoof brand or advertisement, which is important for places like Times Square. These assets were actually some of the last things finished. The billboards were only implemented about 6 months before the launch of the game, once the art team had finalized all the parody logos and slogans. Rockstar's attention to Liberty City's atmosphere extended to the audio design as well. Different neighborhoods have distinct ambient sounds. In one area, you might hear salsa music from an apartment window, and in another, distant sirens and the rumble of the subway. And, as I mentioned earlier, pedestrians speak with dozens of accents and languages reflective of Liberty City's melting pot culture. You'll hear Jamaican patois in Beechwood City, Russian conversations in Hove Beach, Italian-American slang in Alderney, and much more. This level of detail made players feel like no two street corners were exactly the same. And really, they aren't. After spending so much time in Liberty City, you can figure out where you are relatively quickly just based on the vibes. In the end, all the exhaustive research and artistry was about delivering a Liberty City that captures New York's energy without being a slave to its reality. As Dan Houser explained, if we are going to be in a position to make a game about anywhere and show that games can culturally represent a place as well as anything else, if we can't do that about New York City, then where the hell could we do it? That passionate mindset drove the team to pour their hearts into every block of Liberty City. The payoff was an open world frequently cited as one of the most impressive and immersive of its time. A digital city where players could spend hours simply people watching, cruising the streets, or getting lost in its urban maze. The narrative development of Grand Theft Auto 4 went hand in hand with its setting. Once Rockstar chose New York as the backdrop, they asked who comes to New York and why, and the answer became the heart of the story. An immigrant named Niko Bellic arriving in Liberty City chasing the American dream, or at least his cousin's exaggerated promises of it, and escaping a dark past in Eastern Europe. Dan Houser, who co-wrote the game with Rupert Humphreys, said that they wanted a protagonist who felt tough but also like an alien in this environment. An outsider, someone new to America, seeing its extremes with fresh eyes. Niko's status as a stranger in Liberty City provided a perfect lens to satirize and examine American culture in 2008, from its nightlife and crime to its consumerism and political corruption, all while keeping the main character relatable. On one hand, Niko is a little innocent. He's new to American freedoms and even modern technology, things like online dating. And on the other hand, he's this ruthless, battle-hardened killer who isn't scared of much. It's a refreshing coming to America story framed perfectly for a Grand Theft Auto game. Niko's war-torn background was a deliberate choice. The writers decided that making him an ex-soldier from Eastern Europe, not confirmed but implied to have fought in the Yugoslav wars, would not only explain his lethal skills but also add a layer of tragedy and depth to his character. They consulted crime experts who noted that many of the really scary, ruthless criminal figures in the modern underworld weren't born in America. This informed their thinking that Niko, as a foreign veteran, could believably get entangled with dangerous gangs and have the stomach for Liberty City's violent jobs. He's no rookie. In several of the executions you do in the game, Niko can be seen covering his face from blood spatter, or making the person suffer with little shots to the knees before finishing them off. Despite his criminal ability, Niko is portrayed as more introspective and morally conflicted than prior Grand Theft Auto characters. He is haunted by betrayals and atrocities from war, and one of his motives in Liberty City is to track down a former comrade who sold out his unit years ago. This gives the story a revenge thread, but one that doesn't dominate Niko's personality. Dan Houser said we wanted Niko to be more of an anti-hero than a hero. He's capable of compassion and positive actions within his criminal world at times, even as he can be a cold-hearted killer when pushed. The duality makes Niko a more rounded character than past GTA protagonists. Players might not agree with everything that Niko does, but they can understand him. Rockstar also intentionally moved away from heavy movie references in the story. Earlier Grand Theft Autos took a lot of inspiration from mob and gangster films like Scarface for Vice City, Boys in the Hood for San Andreas, etc. This time they wanted something original. Instead of emulating a specific film, GTA 4's story draws more from the real ethos of New York crime and immigrant experiences. That said, the team are film buffs and the narrative naturally channels classic crime drama vibes. There are some echoes of movies like The Godfather or Eastern Promises in its organized crime themes. But there's no one-to-one copy of any film plot. In tone, Grand Theft Auto 4 is more grounded and serious than its predecessors, though Rockstar's trademark dark humor and satire are still present. For example, there's an in-game mission where Niko goes on a spoof of a reality TV show vigilante raid with plenty of sarcastic wit in the dialogue.
Walk out of there just one more time. We need to get the shot just right.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I can put my foot to your face if you like. I don't mind doing that again and again till I get it right.
Easy, Niko.
These reality TV hosts also get their own dose of reality when they think the world is just a game.
Hey, aren't you that guy from the TV?
The writing process for the game began very early in development, even as the city was being mapped out. After coming up with the broad concept of Niko and Liberty City, the Housers and Leslie Benzes would spend time brainstorming story ideas in a very free-form way. Dan then went off and drafted a rough story synopsis, which was about 6 pages long, that outlined the characters, major plot points, and narrative flow. They also compiled a list of key characters up front, then gave those to the artists so that concept art and character modeling could start even as the script was still taking taking shape. Once the core team was happy with the story outline, the design team broke that into a huge flowchart of missions, essentially a blueprint of the game's structure. Which missions happen in which order, which unlocks new city areas, how the player's progression unfolds, you know, all that fun stuff. Leslie Benzes and the designers made sure that there was a logical progression through the city and the mission tree, even though at any given time the player might have several missions to choose from. Dan Houser explained, "To you playing the game, it's non-linear, because at any point you might have 15 things to do, but we can track on a huge multi-tiered document where you can be and take you on a trip around the world all at the same time." In other words, a ton of planning went into the story, world exploration, and gameplay pacing that all meshed together perfectly.
Bling, check. Bodies, check. Paper, check. That's how we roll.
After that master plan was set, the script writing kicked off. Dan Houser and a couple of co-writers, including Rupert Humphreys, write the actual scene dialogue. They first write the mission introductions, you know, the cutscenes that play before each mission starts. Those were tackled early because they define the purpose and tone of every mission. And then later they fill in the in-mission dialogue, the banter during the missions often heard during car rides or combat. Dan noted that improved facial animation in GTA 4 allowed them to write more nuanced, slower moments and cutscenes without losing player interest, because the characters could emote more subtly now. They wrote an enormous amount of dialogue. The final script was on the order of 1,000 pages, covering main story scenes, random encounters, phone conversations, and ambient events. To keep things from getting too repetitive in gameplay, they even wrote alternate lines for mission retries. So if you fail and redo a mission, Nico might quip, "Alright, let's try this again," instead of repeating the exact same dialogue. And that was to make it feel less like Groundhog Day when you had to replay a section.
I'm sure it was real nice. Maybe you can pick up another one on craplist.net. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that cousin of yours. He won't be in no danger sleeping in your Algonquin pad by yourself.
GTA 4's story unfolds as a series of episodic arcs in Liberty City's criminal underworld. Nico arrives fresh off the boat, does some small jobs for his cousin Roman and some low-level hustlers, and gradually works his way up through mob bosses, corrupt officials, and drug kingpins. All along the way, he wrestles with his own consciousness and is forced to choose allegiances. At a few key junctions, the player can even make story decisions, like choosing which of two characters to kill that affect the ending of the game. The team wrote a variety of characters to populate this journey, from deadly serious villains to comedic sidekicks, reflecting that full spectrum of New York archetypes. Characters like Brucey Kibitz, a vain steroid-pumping club promoter, add a lot of humor, while others like Packy McCreary, an Irish-American gangster from a broken family, bring some tragedy and perspective. Nico's cousin Roman Bellic is a central character, providing some comic relief as a talkative, big-hearted taxi company owner who's in over his head.
You want to know why I'm not living in a nice condo, banging for women? It's because of shit like this. Assholes threatening me.
The relationship between Nico and Roman's constant invitations to go bowling became an endearing element as you play the game. During development, Rockstar wanted to avoid hiring big Hollywood stars for main roles, a trend that they've been doing since San Andreas by having an unknown main protagonist, but in GTA 4 they went full send. Most of the primary voice actors were relatively unknown talents, and this was partly due to some past negative experiences with celebrities and also creative choice. They didn't want you to hear a famous actor in every cutscene the main character talks in. They wanted you to know the voice as Nico and only Nico. The actor who voices Nico, Michael Hollick, wasn't a household name, but he delivered a performance that won him a lot of praise and a Spike TV award for best performance. Likewise, Roman was voiced by Jason Zumwalt, and other major characters by theater and TV actors who fit their roles well but didn't distract with celebrity. Definitely no Ray Liotta's or Sam Jackson's or freaking Phil Collins in this game. That said, GTA 4 did feature some cameos from a few celebrities in smaller roles. For example, Jason Sudeikis voiced a radio DJ, along with DJ Green Lantern, Iggy Pop, and Daddy Yankee, and both Ricky Gervais and Cat Williams appear as themselves doing stand-up comedy in Liberty City's comedy clubs. Some other comedians like Jim Norton and Bill Burr play some very minor roles in the game as well, only getting a few lines of dialogue. Rockstar found ways to include celebrity talent in these tongue-in-cheek cameos, but they kept the storyline focused on its own original characters. As recording went on, the team captured a tremendous amount of voice acting. GTA 4's cutscenes were largely motion captured with real actors on a stage, and then the voice was either recorded on the spot or dubbed after. Up to 8 actors at a time could perform together in mocap suits for the more dynamic scenes, and this added a lot to the natural feel of conversations and character movements and cutscenes. The facial animation was done separately using a system by Image Metrics, which allowed detailed facial expressions to be mapped onto the character models, with each character's face having around 100 joints to articulate different expressions. All of this was cutting edge for 2008, contributing to why GTA 4's story scenes felt more cinematic and engaging compared to prior games. There were definitely some mocap moments in prior games, but nothing on this level. By the time the story and character work was done, Rockstar had created an epic crime saga that spans about 90 main missions. Critics and fans alike lauded the narrative for its more serious and character-driven approach. It felt like The Sopranos in video game form, better than the actual Sopranos in video game form. Niko Bellic's journey from naive newcomer chasing money and women to a hardened criminal looking for something meaningful resonated with many players, and it showed that a video game storytelling could tackle complicated themes like emptiness of revenge and the elusive nature of the American dream. As Dan Houser reflected, the quality of writing had to rise alongside the quality of technology, and the GTA 4 team certainly aimed to prove that games could deliver narrative depth on par with film and TV. Dan Houser once commented that, "We've always said we're not going to release a large amount of games. They're going to have the production values of movies and be about themes that interest us." With GTA 4, those themes were immigration, identity, revenge, cycles of violence, and the cost of ambition, all filtered through the gritty, satirical lens of Grand Theft Auto.
What's your problem, fag lover?
Whatever you say, buddy. Unfortunately, for hitting my friend, I'm going to kick the shit out of you.
No Grand Theft Auto experience would be complete without a bomb soundtrack and audio atmosphere, and GTA 4 was no exception. The music design of Grand Theft Auto 4 was an enormous project in itself. The game shipped with a soundtrack of over 200 licensed songs, spread across 18 in-game radio stations, plus an original score for certain missions and scenes. The goal, according to Rockstar's music supervisor Ivan Pavlovich, was to capture the sound of New York City in 2008. They wanted to pick songs that not only represented New York in 2008, but also wouldn't feel dated when playing the game later on. This meant choosing a wide range of genres reflecting the city's diversity, from hip-hop, R&B, and reggae to rock, punk rock, electric, jazz, talk radio, and even some Eastern European pop to nod to Nico's homeland. The radio stations in Liberty City felt like real New York City radio, each with their own DJs, branding, and playlists carefully curated to fit a style. Hip-hop stations had artists like Busta Rhymes, Fat Joe, Nas, and Swizz Beats. Classic rock had Stevie Nicks, Smashing Pumpkins, Queen, and Black Sabbath. R&B had Neo, R. Kelly, Barry White, and Marvin Gaye, and that's just scratching the surface of the nearly 20 radio stations. Rockstar undertook a Herculean licensing effort to secure all of this music. They ended up contacting over 2,000 people to clear recording and publishing rights for various tracks. In one case, they even hired a private investigator to track down the relatives of a deceased artist, Sean Delaney of the Scat Bros, so that they could license his 1979 disco song Walk the Night for the game. The soundtrack budget must have been hefty. Billboard reported Rockstar paid up to $5,000 for each song's composition rights and another $5,000 for the master recording, meaning that they potentially spent $10,000 per track in some cases. Multiply that by 200 plus songs and that's a lot of money. But Rockstar knows that music is vital to GTA's identity. Just imagine cruising around Liberty City listening to some royalty-free beats, rather than Busta Rhymes and Nas. There was also a good amount of commissioned exclusive content. DJ Green Lantern was brought in to produce exclusive original tracks for the rap station, The Beat 102.7. So as you drive around, you'll hear some beats and remixes that were made specifically for Grand Theft Auto 4, like songs from Styles P, Busta Rhymes, Mano, and several others. They also involved real-world radio personalities. For the reggae and dancehall station Massive B, Rockstar had DJ Bobby Condors, who runs the Massive B record label in New York City, hosted as himself. Condors even flew to Jamaica to record local dancehall artists doing a special version of each song that shout out Liberty City's boroughs throughout the music, adding an authentic touch for the Jamaican neighborhoods. Several stations feature some real celebrity hosts as well, like Iggy Pop hosting Liberty Rock Radio, complete with his wild commentary between classic tracks, and fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld, oddly enough, hosts the Eurodance station, The Studio. And these touches blurred the line between the Grand Theft Auto world and reality in a fun way. Interestingly, early in development, the team toyed with the idea of letting players buy music in-game. They imagined that Nico could visit a record store and purchase songs, or that he might have an MP3 player or something to create a custom playlist. Both concepts were dropped, likely because they broke the realism. Nico curating an iPod doesn't exactly fit his story, and because licensing complexities for an on-demand soundtrack might have been messy. Instead, they did something more clever. GTA 4 integrated with an online music service for the first time. If you heard a song and you liked it on the radio, you could use Nico's cell phone to dial a service called Zit, and this would send you a text message with the song's name and artist, and in real life you could get a link to purchase the song. It was a cool way to connect players with the music outside of the game. Beyond the radio, GTA 4 had an original score for certain missions and cutscenes, a first for the series. In previous GTAs, every moment relied on radio or ambient music. In 4, composer Michael Hunter, who also wrote the theme song Soviet Connection, and others provided tense cinematic music for a few story moments. For example, during the bank heist mission, a score track kicks up to amp up the drama. Still, the majority of the time, the player-driven radio was the soundtrack, letting you flip through stations and discover songs as you explore Liberty City. On the voice talent side, we've already discussed how Rockstar shifted to using some lesser known actors for major roles to maintain the immersion of the game. The voice recording process was extensive. To handle 80,000 lines, Rockstar's audio team had to wrangle hundreds of actors, often recording numerous variations of lines. Michael Holick voiced Nico Bellic, who nailed his gruff Serbian accent and weary tone. Holick's performance gives Nico a dry wit in many scenes, but also genuine emotion in pivotal moments. His "maybe here things will be different" monologue in the opening, or his angry outburst when confronting some enemies. It really sets the mood of the game.
I'll rip your fucking heart out!
Jason Zumwalt infused Roman Bellic with an upbeat, comedic energy, making him lovable even when he's ignoring the player with bowling invites. Dozens of other cast members fleshed out the world as well. Thomas Lyons as the corrupt Francis McCreary, Marty Margolin as the villainous Dmitry Raskolov, Cooley Ranks, a reggae artist, as the accent-thick Little Jacob, and so on. Even the radio chatter and pedestrian dialogue required so many voice actors. For example, there is a whole cast just for the spoof talk radio stations, featuring some real comedians and radio personalities satirizing politics, health fads, and conspiracy theories.
I don't need to know your name, nor you mine. Tell a stranger your name, and within minutes, you're in every database in Africa. People are trying to sell your credit card debt and planning to steal your kidney. Pay attention. Wake up now.
Rockstar's attention to detail extended to directing these actors to sound authentic. Since Liberty City's populace is so diverse, they had actors of various backgrounds. You'll hear real Russian actors voicing some of Nico's underworld contacts, Caribbean actors for the Jamaican characters, and so on. They reported they had some actors record lines entirely in foreign languages with subtitles, for when Nico overhears conversations in languages he doesn't understand. This is why strolling through Little Odessa in-game, you might catch two men arguing in Russian about the good old days. A tiny detail that many players might miss, but it's there. And other than various radio personalities with celebrity voices, as I mentioned before, comedians like Ricky Gervais appear in animated form performing a full stand-up routine. And these routines were actually written and performed by Ricky Gervais exclusively for Grand Theft Auto 4's Comedy Club. Cat Williams did the same. These cameo performances added an extra layer to the game's atmosphere, making Liberty City feel like a place where even famous comedians might drop by, as much of their set refers to the city itself.
I'm enjoying being here in Liberty City. It's crazy. Gotta have a car here, it would seem, because you motherfuckers walk too fast for me. Liberty's. What the fuck? Are y'all going somewhere? Is there a rave or some shit that I don't know about that everybody's rushing to get to?
The sound design as a whole, the music, the voices, the sound effects, all earned a lot of praise. Reviewers noted that the radio DJs and commercials were hilarious and on point, and the way the soundtrack just fit the setting of the game was perfect. Flipping on any of the crazy talk show radios as you drive around is no different than putting on some podcast now. Some of them even talk about familiar topics and rant about real world problems. The care that they put into the audio is exemplified by little things. Getting out of the car, whether by opening the door or getting ejected through the windshield, will change the dynamics of the music on the radio and how you hear it, or how the sound of your car engine echoes differently under a bridge versus in the open street. By the time that GTA 4 came out, players were given a world not only visually rich and narratively engaging, but alive with the sounds of the city, and a pretty banging playlist to boot. From pulling off high-speed getaways with Lil Wayne singing about a crack house in the background, to creeping through alleyways in tense silence broken only by distant sirens. The music and the voice work in GTA 4 amplified every moment. As music supervisor Ivan Pavlovich reflected, it was about finding those songs, all 200 plus of them in the end, that defined the city's character. And Dan Houser later noted that even though they had moved away from celebrity voices, the performances from their cast made the characters of GTA 4 some of the most memorable yet. Proof that you don't need an Oscar winner to be behind the mic to create an iconic game character.
It's Nico Bellic.
In the end, all the elements, story, city, gameplay, music, all worked in cahoots to deliver an experience that felt remarkably cohesive and immersive, and truly next generation. They not only started Grand Theft Auto's HD universe, but they also got rid of the 3D universe. They literally killed it. There's some graffiti in the game that you can find that says RIP to all the prior protagonists, signaling that this is a full step forward, forgetting everything in the past. Grand Theft Auto 4 represented a significant evolution in the series' gameplay, overhauling core systems from its predecessor, San Andreas. Built on Rockstar's new Rage engine with Natural Motion's Euphoria physics, GTA 4 shifted its gameplay ideology toward realism, much like they did their narrative storytelling, by overhauling gunfights, driving, melee combat, and character physics. The game marked a major shift in gunplay by introducing modern third-person shooter mechanics, most notably an over-the-shoulder aiming view and a fully realized cover system, both firsts for the series. Earlier GTA titles relied on simple crouching or makeshift cover, but GTA 4 formalized combat by allowing Nico to snap to walls, vehicles, and other objects with a single button press. From cover, players could lean out to aim or blind fire, creating encounters that are far more tactical than before. This wasn't just a flashy addition, it was essential. Enemies now use cover intelligently and return blind fire as well, making reckless run and gun tactics a fast route to a death screen. The shooting mechanics themselves also became more refined. Free aiming is more precise and players can target specific body parts, triggering dynamic reactions from NPCs. Knees buckle, arms go limp, and enemies stumble rather than simply dropping on the spot. When aiming, the camera pulls in closer over Nico's shoulder, improving visibility for headshots and limb shots, especially during cover-based fights, where shooting only the visible arm or leg that you can see is the best way to get that person out of cover. The combat overall feels heavier and more grounded, largely thanks to Rockstar's use of the Euphoria physics engine. Characters react realistically to being hit, grabbing their wounds, or losing balance mid-fight, which adds some weight and tension to every encounter. Critics widely praised these changes, noting that the gunfights in GTA 4 felt more visceral and physical than anything the series had done before. Chasing someone down in the street and just gunning them down feels a little too real, to be honest. Overall, the gameplay feels more streamlined, but that focus came with some trade-offs as well. One of the most noticeable was a reduced weapon variety compared to San Andreas. GTA 4 sticks to a more realistic arsenal. Pistols, shotguns, SMGs, rifles, and some explosives, while cutting many of the wackier or more niche weapons from earlier games. There's no flamethrowers, miniguns, chainsaws, or dildos. In total, GTA 4 features just 16 weapons. Many of these cuts were made to support the game's grittier tone, though some omissions feel harder to justify. Weapons like brass knuckles or a silenced pistol could have fit the grounded aesthetic perfectly, and added more tactical depth to the game. Interestingly, several of the more extreme weapons did exist during development. Flamethrowers, miniguns, and other heavy weapons appeared in beta builds, but Rockstar deliberately scaled things back. One review even remarked that GTA 4 was more remarkable for what it doesn't include than for what it does, highlighting how much was stripped away in favor of a more focused experience. And I can see the appeal of limiting the arsenal to what an arms dealer might realistically smuggle into Liberty City, but that illusion starts to fall apart when you're still buying RPGs from shady shops or picking picking up crates of hand grenades from the trunk of some Jamaican dude's Lincoln.
And I got enough guns in my youth.
On top of this, San Andreas' weapons skill system was completely removed. In San Andreas, repeated use of firearms improved proficiency, eventually unlocking dual wielding for certain weapons. GTA 4 drops these RPG style mechanics entirely, which makes sense since Nico's already fairly proficient with weapons as a war vet, but it does dull the whole system a little bit. Sometimes having a little progression system is fun, and it gives some incentive to use different weapons to unlock new proficiency in those weapons, but it really is not that big of a deal. In this game, it's just choose whatever gun is your favorite and just pull the trigger, which is good in its own right.
Don't fuck with me!
Melee combat in Grand Theft Auto 4 was also redesigned to be simpler in mechanics but smoother in animation compared to San Andreas. San Andreas had an ambitious melee system for its time. CJ could learn multiple different fighting styles like boxing, kung fu, or kickboxing by visiting different gyms, and each style granted some unique combos and special moves. Players could chain punches and even perform running attacks or grapple moves in San Andreas. And by mixing styles or maxing out CJ's muscle stat, you could deal some serious damage with your fists. However, those systems were somewhat clunky in action, and honestly, I rarely use them when playing San Andreas. GTA 4 took a different approach. It streamlined Melee into a single fighting system for Nico, but refined the core mechanics to feel more natural and cinematic. In GTA 4, hand-to-hand fights revolve around timing-based strikes, blocks, and counters. Nico can throw quick jabs or strong punches and perform a new dodge move if the player taps the button at the right moment. Nico slips or blocks an incoming hit, opening the enemy to a counterpunch. This makes melee encounters more about reflexes and timing than button mashing. The game even allows some disarming of enemies. Say you're getting shanked with a knife by some thug, if you dodge just right, Nico will wrestle it from his hands. Unlike in San Andreas, you cannot switch between fighting styles. Nico's moveset is fixed, but the available moves cover all the basics, and honestly, while cool and in-depth, it's something that I would only mess around with briefly. Usually, I just draw a gun after a few punches, but some of the short combos you can do are sick. Dodging, then tossing an uppercut, or a spinning back fist or kick, or even a stiff kick to the nuts. It's all really satisfying if you do pull it off, but again, I'm more about that gunplay. The beauty of this fighting system is in its presentation though. The euphoria physics makes melee combat more believable and just satisfying. Punches have a sense of impact and enemies react fluidly to hits, sometimes stumbling or falling in an unscripted way, whereas older games had more canned fall animations. San Andreas did allow some flashy moves like a running jump kick or a ground stomp, but GTA 4's fights look like a fight that you would see just walking down the street, just two dudes throwing it down. That results in some fights that are just shorter and more brutal. All it takes is a few punches and the fights are over, either by KO or the guy just kind of runs away. Using weapons is much the same. There are some combos you could do with both the baseball bat and the knife, and one or two hits from the bat or stabs with the knife will end a scuffle, and the dynamic reactions are great as well. Also, something to note simply because it's just hilarious, you can pick up random objects and throw them at people for funny reactions. Everything from bricks to ketchup bottles. One of the most controversial changes in GTA 4 was its completely overhauled driving physics. Vehicles in GTA 4 handle with a sense of weight, momentum, and realistic body roll that was virtually absent from the earlier, more arcade-style driving in the games like San Andreas. In San Andreas, cars and bikes were very forgiving. You could take corners at high speed with ease, and overall the feel was fast and loose. GTA 4, by contrast, introduced a heavier physics-based driving model. Cars have inertia, suspensions visibly shift, tires can lose grip, and collisions feel more consequential. The game effectively simulates proper weight transfer. For example, slamming the brakes will dip a car's nose, and fast turns will cause noticeable body lean or even rollovers. This is seen especially in the larger vehicles in the game. Damage also affects performance. Cars can get their hoods crunched and result in a loss of power, or their tires can get bent, making turning more difficult. And damage makes the car catch fire more gradually when compared to prior games. Smoke and small flames from the hood spread gradually as you drive, and large fires can even burn the rubber off the wheels. It's a really cool, immersive system. Individual body panels can get crumpled in several different ways, more than just a texture change on the vehicle. The car models are altered from impacts. The shift in driving physics ended up being one that caused a bigger stir than anything else in this game though. Many players and some critics praised the added realism and challenge of the driving, feeling that the weighty handling made high-speed chases more intense and rewarding. Skilled drivers could power slide around corners or thread through traffic in a way that felt earned. Other players, however, disliked what they perceived as sluggish boat-like controls. Common complaints were that the cars felt floaty or too slow to respond, with soft suspensions that caused a lot of sway when turning. On rough turns, you might see the car bob and weave as if on water, which was jarring to those who expected the arcade driving that was in the prior games. And honestly, when this game first came out, I did fall into that camp. I just didn't like the driving at first, but now it's my favorite game to drive in. I think it just centered that realism feel for me. It matches the gritty tone of the game. Even GTA 5 was a downgrade in my opinion from this game after I learned to love this game's driving. They also added a layer of strategy, like wet roads significantly lengthened braking distance or increased sliding and sharp turns, and they made Liberty City's vehicular action feel more unpredictable. This combined with the crash physics was fantastic though. Sharp impacts have Nico flying through the windshield like he never heard of seatbelts. And getting one of your tires shot out essentially stopped you in your tracks as you lost all control. Motorcycles also functioned under the same physics engine. I feel like the motorcycle models themselves didn't have different impact variations on their panels as the models were just smaller than the cars. But the driving physics and the road physics that affected the motorcycle were all the same. If you get into a crash, Nico will sure as hell go flying off of one in an impact, which funny enough you can choose and wait to have him put a helmet on when hopping on a bike, which makes head impacts after getting tossed actually survivable. It's not just a cosmetic feature like I thought. Putting the helmet on actually makes you lose less health when you get thrown from a bike. Another cool thing I noticed after playing The Lost and the Damned again is that Johnny doesn't wear a helmet. You can wait as long as you want, he won't put one on, and he falls off the bike a lot less than Nico does. So the game kind of coded in a better rider skill for Johnny over Nico, which just makes a ton of sense. And he doesn't wear a helmet because he's just a rough and tough biker dude. You know, they don't wear helmets, they're too cool for that. One of GTA 4's most notable new features is the ability to socialize with Nico's friends outside of the main plot. After completing key missions for characters like Roman, Little Jacob, Brucey, Packy, or Dwayne, Nico can call them up to hang out. And each friend has a like percentage in the stats menu. Spending time together raises this friendship level, while neglecting or refusing their invites will gradually lower it. The system is somewhat the same to the girlfriend dating in San Andreas, but applied to male friends. If you keep them happy, generally above 75% like level, they will eventually reward you with some special perks. Mechanically, arranging a hangout is as simple as calling a friend or responding when they call you. You have to pick them up at a designated spot within about an hour, or else their liking for you will drop for standing them up. Then you just ride off and take part in one of the many Liberty City pastimes: eating, drinking, bowling, darts, pool, visiting a strip club, or catching a show, among some other things. Each friend also has a preference on what they like to do that will raise their likeness of you even more, but really the homies are down for anything. Brucey even has some unique hangouts that involve Nico, him, and two chicks that go out on a boat or a helicopter ride, kind of like a weird double date thing. And during the drive to each venue, friends will chat with you, often spilling personal backstory or commenting on recent events in the game. These chats provide extra characterization and humor. For example, Packy might reminisce about his family crimes, or Brucey will talk about hooking up with some chicks or something along those lines. Dialogues that enrich the narrative beyond the main story. In a sense, these casual hangouts let the game breathe a little bit. Nico gets to act almost like a regular dude for a night, highlighting the contrast between his violent work and his personal life. It's a grounded counterpoint to the main story's intensity, even if it is often laced with some dark comedy, like drunkenly stumbling out of a bar and trying to yell for a taxi, or hell, even drinking and driving, which is its own sort of fun.
Taxi cab!
At high friendship levels, each buddy offers a unique friend ability as a reward for Nico's camaraderie. Roman, Nico's cousin, sends a cab for Nico anytime, providing a free service to any destination. Also, I didn't know this, but Roman's taxi can even ignore police attention, when a yellow cab won't pick you up if you have a wanted level. Lil Jacob becomes an arms dealer, which is one of the most useful friend abilities in the game, driving to Nico's location with a trunk full of discounted weapons, easily the most convenient way to get armed, instead of going way out of your way to find a gun shop. Brucey flies out with his personal helicopter to give Nico a lift across the city on demand, which sounds way cooler than it actually is, as you have to meet him on a rooftop and he can only pick you up and drop you off at specific locations in the city. I just wish he'd swoop down into Central Park to get me off the ground or something. That'd be much cooler. Packy, in traditional Irish fashion, will supply Nico with a car bomb to go into any car for whatever reason you may have for that. I honestly never use this ability outside of a couple missions where it's kind of required. And Dwayne becomes a friend who offers some backup in gunfights. Not himself, but instead a few armed men that will follow you around and shoot people for you. It's just pretty helpful in certain side missions and activities. I think the whole system is pretty cool. It's a tad tedious to go on dates all the time, and when they call you and you ignore them, you lose some reputation towards that friend benefit, so it's kind of annoying sometimes. But you get some pretty sick rewards for just hanging out with your buddies. Roman and Jacob's perks are nearly essential in the game in my opinion. I use them all the time. The other ones not so much, but fun things to play around with. The constant calls to hang out did become infamous with this game though, as Roman's call saying, "Hey cousin, let's go bowling," kind of turned into a meme with this game.
Nico, it's your cousin. You want to shoot some pool?
Shit, Roman, I can't talk now. Damn.
And there's no real way to outright disable these outings without upsetting your friends, which makes this feature feel kind of intrusive over time, especially after the game's over, when they still call you when I'm just trying to gather footage for this video. Still, from a thematic standpoint, these friendships reinforce one of GTA 4's key themes, the pull between Nico's violent business and the ordinary, even sentimental human connections that he tries to maintain. The girlfriend dating mechanic is much the same as the buddy system. Nico can date several women throughout the game. Two of them, Michelle and Kate, are encountered during the main storyline, much like the story introduced girlfriends in San Andreas. In addition, Liberty City's online dating lets Nico meet 3 other potential girlfriends: Carmen, Kiki, and Alex. The dating process is similar to hanging out with the boys. You pick up the lady and take her out to eat, drink, or just have some fun, but involves a little bit more courtship strategy. Each woman has distinct taste, and the game actually tracks Nico's choices in 3 areas: clothing, vehicle, and where he takes them on a date. In other words, a successful date means dressing in an outfit that she likes, driving a car that she finds impressive, and choosing activities that suit her personality. For example, Michelle likes Russian clothes, basic cars, and going to play darts or pool, while Alex, the bougie blogger, likes fancy suits, sports cars, and going to the strip club. Just like with friends, taking girlfriends out increases their fondness for Nico over time. Reaching a high fondness unlocks special benefits from the 3 girls that you meet online, which means putting in the effort to charm them can pay off with some helpful perks, other than just some hot coffee later after the date.
You going to invite me upstairs for coffee or something?
Sure. I like you.
Carmen, who is known as Sobo Ho on the online dating app, is a nurse who can boost Nico's health on demand, and if your health is low, you can call Carmen. She'll give you some nurse's advice, magically restoring some of your health bar.
Poor baby! Just apply pressure to any wound. Call Carmen later, okay?
Carmen, you're a lifesaver. Thank you.
Smash! Fucking smash!
Kiki, known as Law Chick, is a lawyer. Kiki can pull some strings to reduce Nico's wanted level. Once per day, calling her will clear up to a 3-star wanted rating, helping our criminal hero escape the law when things get hot.
Hey, baby, there are some cops after me. I think they're just looking for another immigrant to pick on.
Those cops do not deserve their badges. Let me talk to the DA. Kiss, kiss, Nico.
and Alex, who is known as Liberated Woman. She's a trendy nightlife blogger with high-end taste. Dating her gives Nico a permanent 50% discount at clothing stores across Liberty City. Fittingly, she improves your wardrobe on the cheap, since she likes that fancy shit. She also writes about Nico in her blog after some of the dates as well, and calling him her sexy European man, which is kind of funny if you want to go on the internet and browse her blog and just read about it. Another one of those things that just shows how deep this game goes if you really want to look for the details. These girlfriends are entirely optional. You may not even interact with them if you never browse the internet, but they can be helpful, mostly just Kiki. Carmen barely heals you, and Alex's discount is pretty useless by the time you get to the point where you're just loaded with cash. The two story-related girlfriends do not give any gameplay perks. Their role is more narrative. Michelle serves as an early game love interest, though players eventually learn that she isn't who she seems. Her plot twist ties directly into GTA 4's main story, reinforcing Nico's trust issues. And Kate McCreary is a potential romantic interest whose relationship with Nico is explored in cutscenes and can influence the story's ending, but again, she doesn't really affect any gameplay stats. In terms of tone, dating in GTA 4 is a mix of sincere character interaction and the franchise's trademark satire. The dates themselves lead to amusing dialogue exchanges. Sometimes Nico awkwardly tries to flirt or answer personal questions, giving us windows into his past. The women also comment on Nico's behavior and occasionally on the absurdity of Liberty City itself. Notably, if a date goes well, Nico might be invited inside for some coffee, where you just hear some muffled comedic lines or moans as the screen fades, maintaining the game's more grounded story-focused approach to adult themes.
Nico, you can prosecute me anytime.
Overall, the dating is the same as the friendships, a break from the heaviness of the story of the game, and something to do to deepen the narrative of both Nico and life in the city. I suppose we should touch on some of these activities and minigames to do in the city. While not nearly as exhaustive of a list as San Andreas, there are quite a lot to get into. A fully implemented 10-pin bowling game, a standard 301-point dart game, a surprisingly fun pool system. There's some arcade games like Cubed, a Tetris-style game. There are venues and shows to attend which aren't activities per se, but scripted entertainment. The Cabaret Club has an assortment of different oddball acts that perform, like magicians, dancers, and a drunk stand-up comedian, or the Split Sides Comedy Club to watch real-life comedians like Cat Williams or Ricky Gervais perform short routines. Visiting a strip club is possible if you want to just stare at dancers or go get a lap dance, and of course there are stunt jumps scattered around the city, which is a series staple. There's helicopter tours where you can cruise around the city in a helicopter, pretty self-explanatory, and hidden packages in the form of pigeons, or as the game calls them, flying rats, and there's 200 of them bitches you gotta hunt down if you want that sweet 100% completion. All you get as a reward from this is a lousy Black Hawk chopper parked on top of one of the buildings in Algonquin. There are also some more content-focused side missions and things to do. Taxi driving makes a return to this game as well, a series staple at this point, although this time it thematically makes sense as you're just driving different fares for your cousin's taxi business and making some cash doing it. Vigilante missions also make a return, less thematically appropriate however, but if Nico gets his hands on a police cruiser, he can log into the police computer and not only tackle calls on what's happening right now in the city like typical vigilante missions in prior games, there's also a most wanted database where Nico can hunt down Liberty City's most dangerous criminals. A fun little side job. One of the few times I used Dwayne's friendship perk to get some armed help. You can steal cars for Brucey and bring them to his shop for him to chop or flip. He doesn't really pay very much for these, but it does increase your friendship with him so you don't need to go to more strip clubs constantly to get his friend perk. You can also steal cars for Brucey's friend Stevie, who doesn't care about being your friend, so instead he pays you pretty well in cash. Some cars get you like 30k, which blows Brucey's $1,000 per car out of the water. You can also keep delivering any car that you steal to the shop once you get all the cars on his list done first. It's like an infinite source of income early in the game. Also, to go along with the Grand Theft Auto, you can call up Brucey to do some street races as well for some more cash. Little Jacob also has a side job that he has you do that goes towards his friendship level. You can drive around some rust bucket full of drugs to drop off and sell them. Sometimes this goes smooth, sometimes you get robbed, and sometimes it's a police thing. And you only get $250 per delivery, which is pretty ass. But once you beat them all, you get a cool Range Rover with the Jamaican flag colors, so worth it, I guess. And it does increase Lil Jacob's friendship level to get his perk, which is the best in the game, so I guess it's okay. The final and most interesting side missions are the Fixer assassination missions. Similar to the payphone missions in GTA 3, some guy called the Fixer gives Nico a rundown on a target that needs to be killed, and Nico goes and does the job. Simple missions that are oddly satisfying to complete, and the Fixer guy is just cool as hell over the phone.
People come to me when they need something handled. I come to people like you when I need someone handled. Do you get me, brother?
I get you.
Outside of the story missions and the friend missions, scattered throughout Liberty City are random encounters, which Nico can choose to do for some optional mini missions. These encounters were a new addition to GTA 4, foreshadowing the Strangers and Freaks side mission that later became a staple in Red Dead Redemption and GTA 5. In the main game of GTA 4, there are 14 of these adorable little characters to find. They appear only at certain locations after certain storyline progress, indicated by a small blue icon, a person symbol on your radar when you're nearby. Approaching a random character triggers a short cutscene and then a mission or favor of some kind. These people are typically minor figures from the story or atmospheric NPCs with their own little dilemmas. For example, many of them actually showed up briefly during main missions and now reappear for a follow-up, like some dude that was on the boat with Nico when they came into the city, or the Russian mob boss's wife, or a couple characters seeing you after you chose to spare them in a mission. Completing all random character missions contributes towards 100% game completion, but they're largely there for world building and really not much else. There's no real reward for completing it. Sometimes you'll get some cash or something, but nothing substantial or any real reason to do them other than some cool lore. The random character missions range from comedic to dark, often encapsulating GTA 4's overarching themes in a bite-sized form. Each stranger has their own mini story arc that usually gets resolved or at least concluded by the end of their encounters. For instance, one of the first ones you meet is Brian Meach, a down-on-his-luck young dude. Nico first finds Brian loitering around Roman's cab depot, where Brian rambles optimistically and hands Nico $100 for no real reason. He's clearly a small-time user or hustler. When Nico bumps into Brian again later, Brian has fallen into a serious drug addiction and begs Nico to drive him to a dealer to score the biggest rock in the world, which Nico reluctantly does. And by their third meeting, Brian claims to be trying to clean up his life through rehab's 12-step program, part of which involves making amends to those that he's hurt. He asks Nico to escort him to apologize and repay some money to the dealers that he once ripped off. And this doesn't go so smoothly. The dealers beat Brian with a bat and Nico has to intervene and fight them off. In the end, Brian thanks Nico and gives him a few $100s as a gesture of gratitude, seemingly closing out this little redemption arc. It's a small 3-part tale of temptation, addiction, and atonement. Simply a mini version of GTA 4's moral threads. By contrast, some random encounters veer into Rockstar's signature absurdity. Take Eddie Lowe, for example, a creepy character Nico can meet in a desolate alley at night. In their first encounter, Eddie has a bag oozing something and convinces Nico to drive him to the docks so that he can dump it. The whole ride, Eddie babbles off in an off-putting way, setting off alarm bells. Sure enough, when Nico meets Eddie a second time, Eddie reveals himself to be a deranged serial killer, and he suddenly attacks Nico with a knife, forcing the player to put Eddie down in self-defense. Afterward, the game even suggests checking out the in-game internet for news articles and Eddie's own creepy blog. It's a chilling little side story that has essentially zero impact on the main narrative of the game, yet it deeply enriches the atmosphere of the city. Eddie Lowe embodies Liberty City's freaks that exist in the shadows, hinting at horrors outside of Nico's main quests. Some other strangers include people like Pathos, a struggling rapper trying to make it by selling CDs. Nico helps him fend off some haters on 2 different occasions. Marnie, a drug-addicted runaway who Nico ends up helping get back home to the Midwest. Jeff, a paranoid husband who drags Nico into his marriage breakdown with darkly comic results. And Gracie Ancelotti, a girl who Nico kidnaps kidnaps during the story missions of the game, who sees Nico walking down the street after the game's over. She then calls out to her bodyguards to attack Nico. Each encounter is brief, often just one mission or a couple of meetups, but they succeed in making Liberty City feel full of individual stories. Some are tragic, some are humorous, and many are a mix of both. In terms of gameplay, these missions are usually pretty straightforward. Drive someone here, kill or spare a target, maybe deliver a package. The real reward is the storytelling and how it reinforces GTA 4's themes. The random strangers often echo Nico's own struggles. People trying to start new lives or escape their old ones. Victims of the city's cruelty or clinging to delusional dreams. Through his interactions, we see Nico can occasionally be a force of good, helping the innocent or misguided, even as he's also capable of great violence. This echoes the main narrative's exploration of whether Nico, amidst all of his crimes, can find a sliver of personal redemption or at least human connection. Moreover, the fact that some of these strangers tie back to Nico's past choices, like whether or not he killed them in the main story or kidnapped them, subtly emphasizes the game's idea of consequence and morality. It's a subtle touch, but innovative for a series at the time. All of these side activities, friendship outings, dating, minigames, vigilante missions, and random encounters weave into the larger fabric of Grand Theft Auto 4. They provide a rich portrait of life in Liberty City beyond the linear storyline. Some of these systems are inherited from earlier GTA titles, while others are entirely new to Grand Theft Auto 4. Together, they support the game's more serious, character-driven tone by showing what Nico does in his downtime. Yet, they also inject the experience with diversity and some satire. On one day, you might be immersed in a dramatic bank heist mission that feeds the central plot of the game. And on the next, you could be going with little Jacob to eat some fried chicken and talk about some ex-girlfriends. This dynamic interplay between story and sandbox is at the heart of Grand Theft Auto 4's design. It paints Nico Bellic not just as an anti-hero in cutscenes, but as a resident of a sprawling city who partakes in everyday activities, forms friendships, witnesses random tragedies, and occasionally tries to right a wrong. In doing so, the game world feels much more poignant and real, a sandbox filled with both crime and mundane life, where the player can explore the full spectrum of the American dream and the American nightmare, one side activity at a time.
Hello? Is this the police? Look, I'm bloody sorry about this, but I think I've run some poor chap over. He looks dead. Of course I'll hold.
With that being said though, I think it is time to break down the actual plot of this game. The best story in the entire series, in my opinion. So be warned, there will be full spoilers ahead. If for some reason you haven't played this game yet, please go do that. Why are you here? What are you doing? Go play the game. Nico Bellic arrives in Liberty City chasing the American dream, lured by his cousin Roman's stories of sports cars, money, and women. From the moment he steps off the boat, however, that dream begins to rot.
Where's Barbara with big titties and Stephanie who sucks like a vacuum?
What are you talking about?
Roman isn't a success story, but a chronic optimist clinging to denial, running a shabby taxi depot and broker while drowning in debt and in fear from loan sharks rocking his shit. His emails were lies, but not cruel ones. Roman exaggerated his life out of desperation or maybe even shame, hoping to get his cousin to come join him. Hoping that Nico's presence would bring protection, companionship, all around just support. In these early days, Roman is Nico's only anchor in the city, embodying the immigrant belief that if you just survive the next problem, things will finally get better. Liberty City, however, offers no grace period. Albanian loan sharks harass Roman for money, pulling Nico into violent encounters to save his cousin. Nico's no stranger to combat. He takes out the thugs harassing his cousin, rescuing Roman from a beating multiple times over, even killing a guy in one instance by tossing him from a window. This establishes Nico's fierce loyalty to his family, but also his tendency to solve problems with violence, a habit from the past that he hints at is complicated.
Ooh,
Mystery man, strange and exotic sailor.
As Nico settles in Hove Beach, he meets Mallory, Roman's girlfriend, and her friend Michelle, a seemingly kind woman who becomes his first date in the city. For a moment, Nico tastes a normal life, an evening of bowling and the possibility of romance. Yet even here, there's an undercurrent of mystery. Michelle asks some oddly directed questions about Nico's past and Roman's business.
Does Roman get himself into a lot of trouble? Is he involved in criminal stuff?
Foreshadowing that nothing in Liberty City is as simple as it appears. Nico does some taxi work for Roman as well to get by, meeting some of Roman's friends like Little Jacob and doing some side missions for them as well, to the best of his ability.
What?
But Nico's search for honest work is short-lived. Roman's world pulls him back in. Roman owes money all over town, including to a guy named Vladimir, a low-level Russian hood who loans cash at extortionary rates. Vlad is a swaggering bully who sees himself as an influential man around town, but in reality he's just a small-time thug, working under bigger Russian mobsters and thinking that makes him hot shit. Vlad treats the taxi shop like his own, walking all over Roman, and he makes unwanted advances on Mallory right in front of him. Vlad uses Roman's vulnerability to feel powerful. Nico notices this and immediately dislikes Vlad's arrogance and how he insults them as immigrant yokels.
And for an annoying dick, you're really an annoying dick. Where?
Despite Roman's pleas to avoid antagonizing Vlad, Nico's disdain for Vlad only grows. He even gets roped into doing jobs for him to help pay off Roman's debts. He roughs up shopkeepers for protection money, some more poor people who owe money to this asshole. Vlad, drunk on imagined power, even orders Nico to kill a man named Ivan, an errand that Nico can choose to ignore by sparing the man, reflecting Nico's personal code beneath all the cynicism. Saving him allows him to show up later as a stranger encounter in the game, where Ivan now runs his own money-lending business in Alderney, and Nico can choose to help him out with that. The cycle of violence is alive and well in this city.
Ivan! You don't remember me? You nearly killed me, motherfucker!
The breaking point comes when Nico learns that Vlad is sleeping with Mallory, a misguided attempt from Mallory to try to get Vlad to stop harassing Roman. But while Roman drinks the pain away, Nico does something about it.
You're an asshole, Nico Bellic! A disloyal user! After what I did for you, you dick! You fucking dick!
I'm sorry!
Screw you!
Alright, so you want me to deal with it right now?
No. Sit down.
No! I'm not going to stand here and have you call me disloyal. You might let some Russian asswipe bang your woman, but I won't.
But you fucking did!
That was before I knew you cared!
Nico confronts Vlad at the Comrades bar. Vlad mocks Nico, but Nico won't be humiliated. Nico chases Vlad down and kills him without any mercy, getting right up in his face for an execution and covering his own face to prevent his nasty blood splatter from getting on him. This murder is a cathartic win for Nico's honor. He has removed this leech from their lives and proven his loyalty to Roman, yet his rash decision entangles Nico with far more dangerous figures in Liberty City. Vlad was not really respected, but he was a connected guy in the Russian mafia, and by killing him, Nico has inadvertently kicked a wasp nest. This loyalty to family is a big theme in the game. Nico is loyal to anyone that he sees as a friend, but most of all to his family. And even though Roman is freaking out over all these events, Nico is fully confiding in his cousin. He tells him about how he and his men were betrayed in war, and there were 2 possible traitors and one of them lives in Liberty City, and he is here to find them and get vengeance for all of his dead comrades. When Roman was asking him about this before, he brushed it off, and when Nico did open up to Roman, he fell asleep.
Roman! Are you sleeping, you fat fuck? Come on!
But after killing Vlad, he decides to tell Roman the truth now, even though it may not be the best moment.
Why are you telling me this now? Do you always get sentimental after you kill people?
You kept asking.
The fallout from Vlad's execution is immediate. Nico and Roman are kidnapped by Russian mobsters and dragged to a basement where they come face to face with Mikhail Faustin, the crime boss of Hove Beach, and his right-hand man, Dmitry Raskolov. Faustin isn't that upset that Vlad is dead. In fact, he calls him an idiot, but he's more disrespected that someone killed his man without his permission. Nico is as usual calm, cool, and collected.
Oh no, I shit my pants.
While Roman is freaking the fuck out. After some arguments back and forth and Faustin shooting his own goon dead for looking at him funny, he decides to have Nico work for him to pay back his debt of killing Vlad. Once things are calm, they untie Roman as well, and he immediately starts screaming and freaking out, so Faustin shoots him in the stomach, with Dmitri having him laid up receiving medical care for a few days, while Nico becomes Faustin's pawn.
Stop shooting people, you maniac!
Faustin is a former Soviet military man just like Nico, except as a result of his wartime, he is uncompromising, paranoid, and prone to terrifying outrages, which is also amplified by his heavy coke use. In conversations, Faustin swings from friendly and chatty to homicidal without warning, keeping even his allies on edge. Faustin maintains his power through fear. He believes extreme violence is the only way to survive and command any respect. Nico becomes Faustin's tool for sending that message, mostly by going to war with rival Russian mobster Kenny Petrovic, stealing his cargo, blowing up his garage, and even killing his son. But Nico does some other odd jobs here and there for Faustin as well, like killing his daughter's boyfriend, a member of the Lost Motorcycle Club, who is actually voiced by Bill Burr, because pissing off one gang in the city just isn't enough. Why not anger two?
I'm gonna get the brothers and we're gonna kick your fucking ass!
Nico has no dog in this fight. He's pretty much just at the mercy of Faustin since he has Roman on the hook. So whether or not he agrees with these crazy orders are not a consideration.
Explosive! What the fuck?
During his time in Broker, Nico also continues to do some work for Jacob, helping him take out some rival drug dealers and even delivering some drugs himself. He also meets with another one of Roman's friends, Brucey Kibitz, a roided out party animal who is a well-meaning friend, but pretty exhausting to be around. He also has Nico doing some odd jobs that aren't anything out of the ordinary at this point, assassinating some guy who might snitch on him and stealing some cars. Other than these good friends, he is also still dating Michelle to try to have some semblance of a normal life, but most of his time is spent with the Russians. While Faustin grows more erratic, Dmitri plays the opposite role as the calm, calculating brother figure, who has been friends with Faustin since their Soviet days. Where Faustin is all volatile, Dmitri favors tactful negotiation and smart moves. He repeatedly urges Faustin to play by the rules of organized crime and not stir up hornet's nests unnecessarily. Dmitri's personality is direct and polite, even reasonable. He patches up Roman's gunshot wound, and at first he shows Nico a measure of courtesy, explaining why Faustin is the way that he is and pretty much saying that he's sorry for how he acts as they head to a sex shop to extort some money together. However, Dmitri's core motive is self-preservation and power. He's watching his boss unravel and knows that if he doesn't act, Faustin's chaos will destroy them both. Over several missions, the tension between the two Russians escalate. The breaking point comes after Nico kills Kenny Petrovic's son. And now facing a likely war with the Petrovic Mafia, Dmitri secretly strikes a deal. He contacts Petrovic and agrees to eliminate Faustin in exchange for peace, and Dmitri of course gets Nico for this betrayal, since Nico is the one who actually killed the guy's kid. Nico is sent to Faustin's club to execute the very man who has been paying him, and in their final confrontation, a cornered Faustin rages that everyone is against him. He curses the greed and disloyalty that he sees, proclaiming that none of you will survive without me.
None of you will survive in this country without me! This American greed takes everyone!
When Nico meets with Dmitri to collect his payment for killing Faustin, Dmitri reveals his true colors. He has arranged another meeting in a desolate warehouse, and Nico arrives to find Dmitri allied with Ray Bulgarin, a dangerous mobster that Nico has history with. Nico realizes that Dmitri has sold him out, and this was an ambush to take out Nico and tie up any loose ends. Bulgarin is someone that Nico once worked for in Europe. He believes that Nico betrayed him years ago during a smuggling job. Dmitri's motive here is purely just capitalizing on the opportunity. By handing Nico to Bulgarin, Dmitri profits and eliminates a loose end. All of Dmitri's friendliness is gone as he smugly reintroduces Nico to Bulgarin.
You left a good friend of mine out of pocket. Big time.
Hello, Nico.
It's a shocking double cross, but perfectly in character for Dmitri, who showed himself to be a highly self-motivated dude by betraying his own best friend Faustin, and now Nico. A massive firefight erupts. Luckily, Jacob has become Nico's ride-or-die friend at this point and joins him in this meeting, ensuring that he makes it out alive. Nico and Jacob kill many of Dimitri's goons, but Dimitri and Bulgarin both escape. That same night, Dimitri destroys what little Nico and Roman own. He sends men to burn down Roman's apartment and taxi depot and broker, leaving Nico and Roman to stand in the ash of their American dream. Everything that Roman has built for over a decade is gone in flames. They have no home, no income, and some very dangerous people on the hunt for them. They relocate to the relative obscurity of Bohan, hoping to lie low in an apartment of Mallory's. However, Dimitri's betrayal sets up new motive for Nico in the big city. Dimitri becomes the game's overarching antagonist, a constant threat, calling Nico with taunts and making moves against him. And Bulgarin, now revealed to be operating in Liberty City as well, adds to Nico's hit list. Nico chose to trust Dimitri over Faustin, a pragmatic choice that still backfired horribly. Faustin, for all his insanity, was at least straightforward in his brutality. Dimitri's calculated treachery was far more lethal. As Faustin foretold in a paranoid way, American greed takes everyone. Dimitri's greed for power drove him to sell out all his loyalties. Nico once again learns a harsh lesson. In this life, be careful who you trust. The cousins' bond is illustrated in a quiet moment after the fires, where Roman admits his dreams are destroyed, and Nico vows that they will both rise again. This is a turning point for Nico internally. He knows now that revenge against Dimitri is inevitable. He either gets to Dimitri first, or Dimitri gets to him and the people that he loves. He just has to reset and make some new connections in order to be the one that strikes first. Up north in Bohan, Nico and Roman try to piece their lives back together. Roman copes with his taxi business being destroyed by turning to gambling and talks of rebuilding bigger than before. Nico, however, starts making some moves. He does a few more jobs for Brucey. He disguises himself as a gay guy on an online dating site in order to meet up with some dude that owes Brucey money and to kill him, and also participate in some more street races for some cash. Mallory, who grew up in Bohan, introduces Nico to some new people who might have some work. Here, Nico expands his network, working with two interesting but contrasting characters, Manny Escuela and Elizabetta Torres. Manny is a former gang member from South Bohan, and he has reinvented himself as a flamboyant community activist, determined to clean up the streets. He runs the St. Mary's Community Project and even has a documentary crew filming his endeavors. Manny's personality is larger than life. He's loud, self-aggrandizing, constantly spouting about saving the kids from the gangs. In truth, Manny's crusade is pretty hypocritical. While he preaches about getting crime off the streets, he hires Nico, a violent criminal, to do his dirty work. Manny's motive is less about true altruism and more about fame and personal absolution. He wants the film of his life to show him as a hero eradicating crime, but he's unwilling to get his own hands dirty. Manny sends Nico to bust up some local drug dealers and gun down gang members while Manny's cameraman records after the fact. Their partnership is purely transactional. Nico gets paid and Manny gets some footage of himself cleaning the streets. But it's evident that Nico has zero personal loyalty to Manny. He actually seems to dislike the dude a lot, due to how fake he is in front of a camera. Manny even uses Nico to kill an old gang associate who's been mocking him in his documentary, purely to protect his ego and image, highlighting just how shallow Manny's character really is, just straight performative. If Manny represents hypocrisy in Liberty City's underbelly, Elizabetta Torres represents as real as it gets. Elizabetta has been a successful drug dealer in Bohan for over a decade, and in that time she's learned to keep a low profile and eliminate any threats ruthlessly in order to protect her business. She's another old friend of Mallory's, and she definitely has the type of work that Nico is looking for. She's also real, so Nico already likes her way more than Manny. She is initially welcoming and pretty friendly for a drug kingpin, often throwing wild house parties where gangsters, dealers, and other crime-associated personas mingle. But beneath her confident exterior, pressure is coming down pretty hard on her. A city-wide drug crackdown is going on, and she's starting using her own supply to cope with the stress, making her increasingly paranoid. Unlike with Manny, working for Elizabetta introduces Nico to actual big players in Liberty City. In one mission, she asks Nico to watch over a cocaine deal that she's nervous about, and this is where Nico first meets Packy McCreary, the scrappy Irish guy Elizabetta hired to do the deal. Nico provides some sniper cover from the rooftop, and the job goes relatively well. Packy and Nico instantly kick it off as well, but we'll get to him later. She also introduces Nico to Playboy X, a flashy hustler from Algonquin, and Johnny Klebitz, a biker from the Lost MC for a major coke exchange, hoping to offload a lot of product quickly to a big buyer. The deal turns out to be a sting. Noose, Rockstar's version of Homeland Security, and the LCPD swarm the building, forcing the guys to shoot their way out. The heat that Elizabetta has been worried about has officially arrived, confirming her fears that the feds are watching her. And during the escape from the drug sting, Nico brings Playboy back to his place in Algonquin, so this unlocks that section of the map as well. Meanwhile, Nico gets yet another lesson in trust and deception on a more personal level. Throughout Nico's time in Bohan, he continues to see Michelle, Mallory's friend, the seemingly naive girl that he dated back in Broker. Michelle often appears concerned about Nico's dangerous work, asking him to be careful. However, when Elizabetta sends Nico to retrieve a stolen cocaine stash from a deserted hospital, escaping cops and drug dealers alike with the coke, upon delivery, Michelle intercepts him and discloses that she's actually an undercover government agent named Karen. All this time, she was spying on Nico for a shadowy agency, later identified as United Paper, Rockstar's version of CIA or National Security Agency. Michelle, or Karen, apologizes and confiscates the drugs, warning Nico that his criminal activities have not gone unnoticed. For Nico, this one cuts pretty deep. Someone that he trusted in his ambitious attempt at a normal relationship was lying from the start. I mean, at this point, it's been several dates and phone calls and even hot coffee. So when seeing this happen for the first time, it was genuinely pretty blindsiding.
You fucking bitch.
It's a smaller scale echo of Dimitri's betrayal, but it cuts differently. Dimitri is a criminal who is going to do what he has to do. Michelle was just some chick that both Nico and us as a player has spent real time with, like bowling or playing darts. This ruse also forces Nico into a forced cooperation with the United Paper organization. Karen's superiors contact Nico soon after this, implying that if he works for them, they'll ignore all his past crimes and even help him find the man that he's been looking for, the one who betrayed his crew back in Europe.
Interesting. And you whore for the government. I kind of like the honesty in that.
I have a clear conscience.
How very lucky for you.
Back in Elizabetta's world, things spiral quickly downward. The police crackdown intensifies, informants are everywhere, and Elizabetta's drug use worsens her paranoia. Nico's discovery that an LCPD ambush was lying in wait at the coke pickup suggests that someone in her circle is snitching. Elizabetta grows erratic, and neighborhood hero Manny chooses the wrong time to confront her. Filming his documentary finale, Manny barges into Elizabetta's apartment with his cameraman, declaring that he's going to expose her drug operation for the community. But Elizabetta, high and on edge already, shoots Manny and his cameraman, simply stating that she doesn't have time for this.
I am not in the mood for this right now!
Well, he said he was going to bust a dealer.
She then nonchalantly asks Nico to get rid of their bodies. In one brief moment, Manny's storyline ends ironically. The man who wanted credit for cleaning up the streets becomes another corpse in the drug war that he pretended to fight in. Nico stuffs Manny's body in a trunk, cracking jokes at the irony of it all.
Hey, aren't you that guy from the TV?
Really showing how much he never really liked the guy, bringing their bodies back to some back alley doctor to harvest their organs.
Shit. Looks like the bullet went right through this one's eye. And the price of eyes is through the roof at the moment.
Not long after this mission, it's reported that Elizabetta Torres is arrested and facing life in prison, effectively ending her reign in Bohan, putting Nico out of yet another employer, but thankfully, he's met a couple new people to get some work from, mainly Packy and Playboy, so not all is lost. With Elizabetta's operation shut down and Bohan growing too hot, Nico takes his work to Algonquin. By now, Roman, thanks to an insurance payout for his destroyed business and an apparent hot streak in his gambling, has surprisingly rebounded. He purchases a classy penthouse in Middle Park East, giving Nico a new upscale safe house. For the first time, Nico experiences a glimpse of the high life that Roman always fantasized about. Fancy views, new suits, and the feeling of moving up in the world. But the underworld is never far behind, and Nico still has people to find. And at this point, there's a lot going on. He has Packy and his family, Playboy the drug dealer, and this United Paper secret organization to start giving him some work. And he's also on the hunt for Dimitri, Bulgarin, and the traitor from back home. The McCreary family becomes pretty central to Nico's life after Packy's introduction in Bohan. Packy invites Nico into his world, and through him, Nico meets the rest of the McCreary siblings, Francis, Derek, Jerry, and Kate. The McCrearys are Liberty City Irish mob royalty, or at least they were. were. They were once powerful and now they all get talked down to by everyone else, particularly the Ancelottis, one of the Italian mobs in the area.
You work for these Mick bastards, fucking guinea.
They have lost territory and men to gang warfare and drugs, leaving only a few members still standing. Despite this, the McCrearys still have a tight bond, for the most part, and immediately treat Nico like one of their own, especially Packy. Packy is close in age to Nico and becomes one of his truest friends alongside Jacob. He's a wisecracking Irish gangster with a penchant for nihilistic humor, masking the pain of his family's decline, which is right up Nico's alley. Packy appreciates Nico's competence and lack of judgment about the McCrearys' messy dynamics, and in return, Nico enjoys Packy's loyalty and unfiltered honesty, something quite rare in Nico's journey so far. Packy brings Nico into some smaller jobs to test the water. They rob an Ancelotti-controlled shipment of smuggled prescription meds and a warehouse for a bunch of stored money. And you can tell it's mob-owned because all the guys are fat and in tracksuits. Just a bunch of Bobby Bacalas and pussy bompanceros. Impressed by Nico's performance, Packy vouches for him in the family's biggest endeavor, robbing the Bank of Liberty City. One of the most memorable missions in the game that portrays Nico getting a little too deep in the city's crime life. Packy, his brother Derek, an ex-IRA member struggling with drug addiction, their friend Michael, and Nico don ski masks to rob a bank in Algonquin. The robbery quickly turns into a shootout with police through the streets of the city, but ultimately, Nico and the McCrearys, minus St. Michael the poor bastard, make it out with $250,000. This heist is more than just a high adrenaline action set piece. It cements Nico's integration into the McCreary family. Surviving a life or death scenario forges a brotherhood between Nico, Packy, and Derek.
Thanks, Nico. You're a damn good man.
I wasn't just driving you two. The money was in the car as well. Remember that.
We won't forget it, Nico. Here's your cut. I tell Jerry you did good. He might give you a call or something.
Nico also does some work for the other McCreary brothers. For Gerald, he does some more serious damage to the rival gangs in Liberty City, mostly the Ancelottis and the Albanian Mafia. He assassinates Tony Black, a high-ranking Ancelotti member, with a car bomb during a meetup between those two mafias. He dresses like an Albanian thug and runs down another Italian mobster named Frankie Garone on a motorcycle and kills him. And perhaps most heinous of all, Nico kidnaps Gracie Ancelotti, the daughter of the Don of the family, and holds her for ransom, which comes into play later on as well. Derek also has some work for Nico. He wants Nico to kill an old war mate, Bucky, who is blackmailing and threatening the family. He helps a Korean counterfeiter smuggle in a boat full of counterfeit $100 bills and kill yet another person who worked with him in the past and is liable to snitch on him now, a guy named Aiden O'Malley. He's being transferred from the police station to the correctional facility, and Nico has to stop the convoy and break him out, only not for his freedom.
I really am free. I could cry. You've made me a happy man, boys. Now it's time to tell me who asked you to do this.
Derek McCreary. He's my brother.
The McCreary family comes with baggage to weigh out these profitable odd jobs though. One of these is the eldest brother, Francis McCreary, who chose a very different path from his criminal family. He's a police deputy commissioner for the LCPD, but in line with his family, he is corrupt as hell. Francis is a lawman, but just as dirty as any one of his brothers, and he's well aware of it. Upon learning of Nico's exploits with Packy, Francis sees an opportunity to use Nico to eliminate some problems that could expose his corruption. Francis first contacts Nico with blackmail. He has dirt on Nico and threatens to put Nico and Roman both behind bars unless he does his bidding. Francis needs to sanitize his public image by wiping out anyone who could link him to any wrongdoing. Nico actually first encounters Francis when working for Manny and Bohan, but he wasn't really aware of who he was. Now, Nico unwillingly becomes Francis's fixer, silencing a blackmailer with incriminating photographs, or a high-profile lawyer compiling a case against him, and even having him do some vigilante work, killing a drug dealer named Clarence, who can't seem to have a charge stick to him, and then gun down one of his lieutenants that knows too much. Killing Clarence is another one of those optional killings in the game. Nico can choose to spare him for whatever reason, and the only thing that happens if you do is later on you can find him as a stranger encounter and he tries to kill you. Pride is a hell of a drug.
I might be a dick, but you's a bitch!
Francis's ambition for reputation knows no bounds, and eventually he asks Nico to kill his own brother Derek. Now, Derek McCreary is a broken man, a former IRA terrorist and gangster, now a guilt-ridden addict haunted by his past. He's back in Liberty City after years abroad, paranoid that someone wants him dead. which is not entirely wrong since his own brother wants him dead. Francis claims that Derek's erratic behavior, just killing people from your past based on suspicion that they might snitch and killing police convoys to do so, and him potentially talking to journalists as a form of a broken man's confession, will jeopardize the family and, more importantly, Francis's career. So he gives Nico the order to take Derek out.
Kill your brother.
He's already dead. Just put him out of his misery.
Fuck you.
No, fuck you, pal.
However, when Nico speaks with Derek, the picture shifts. Derek says that he believes that Francis is out to kill him and begs Nico to help him out. Suddenly, Nico is caught between two brothers, each asking him to murder the other. There are pros and cons to either option. Francis is a snake who has caused Nico grief with blackmail, but killing a high-ranking cop has big implications. Derek is a troubled soul and a friend of Nico's, but he's also a liability. From an analytical standpoint, this choice reflects Nico's values regarding loyalty and corruption. If Nico kills Francis, it can be seen as an act of loyalty to Packy, sparing Packy's favorite brother Derek, and a stand against Francis's hypocrisy. In this outcome, Derek lives, and Francis's death is covered up as a gang hit. Nico no longer has to worry about Francis's blackmail, but he loses the cash that Francis offered to kill Derek. If Nico kills Derek, Francis is true to his word, and later uses his influence to drop wanted levels for Nico as a reward, allowing you to call up Francis to clear your wanted stars, which is a pretty nice perk. But the cost is Packy's heartbreak and Nico's own guilt at killing a man he sympathized with. While on the rooftop with the sniper rifle with both brothers in your scope, you can call Francis and tell him that you need some help making up your mind, and he'll double the money that he pays you from $10,000 to $20,000. The better choice realistically is killing Derek. Francis gives money and police bribes that help you further in the game, while killing Francis gives you nothing but some respect from Packy. Morally though, the choice isn't so clear. At Derek's or Francis's funeral, the reaction of the family is different, mainly Packy and the surviving brother's presence. Also, Jerry got hauled off to jail, so the mother of the family lost two sons in the same night. And after the funeral, the Albanians that Jerry had been poking at get their revenge and shoot up the funeral, requiring Nico and Packy to drive the body to the cemetery. The second time that Nico has driven around with the body in the trunk so far. Also, if you take too much damage, the coffin will fall out onto the street, failing the mission.
Francis was an asshole, but he didn't deserve to end up on the road like that.
Parallel to these events, Nico grows closer to Kate McCreary, the only McCreary sister and the only genuinely good member of the family. Unlike her brothers, Kate isn't involved in crime. She works a modest job and goes to church in her free time. Packy introduces Nico to Kate at a family gathering, and there's an immediate subtle chemistry. Kate is drawn to Nico's foreign mystique and his attempts at decency despite his lifestyle. Nico is drawn to Kate's innocence and moral center, a beacon of normalcy in his chaotic life, something that he's been chasing since he stepped off that boat. They go on a few dates where Kate often challenges Nico about his choices, urging him that he could do better than a life of crime. Kate becomes a symbol of a possible redemption for Nico, a way out from the cycle of violence in the city, a dream of love and normal life that Nico imagines but isn't sure that he really deserves. In tandem with the McCreary chaos, another key Algonquin subplot is the work for Playboy X. Nico meets Playboy during his Elizabetta missions. He's a young, wealthy hustler who runs drugs and real estate deals from a fancy penthouse in Algonquin. Playboy introduces Nico to high-level urban crime, hiring him for missions where he takes out union goons under the Messina crime family to get Playboy in the good graces of a real estate mogul, as well as normal low-level street stuff like taking out a rival dealer in the area to keep Playboy in power. Playboy is ambitious and flashy. He talks about community development and going legit one day with his real estate moves, yet simultaneously he enjoys the gangster life of petty beefs. He sees himself as a progressive hustler who can straddle both worlds. Contrasting him is Dwayne Forge, Playboy's old mentor who just got out of prison after a lengthy sentence. Dwayne was the big man in the gangland scene back in the 90s and treated Playboy like a son. But while Dwayne rotted away in prison, Playboy transformed into a mogul, and in Dwayne's eyes, forgot the values of loyalty and brotherhood they once shared. Nico is sympathetic to Dwayne. He sees a bit of himself in the world weariness that Dwayne carries. Nico does some work to help Dwayne out as well, trying to reintegrate him into the lifestyle. Nico chases down Dwayne's ex-girlfriend Charisse, who he sent money to while in prison, and her current boyfriend Javon, who is actually the one who snitched on Dwayne and got him arrested. Nico kills Javon for Dwayne's money, and again, there's a choice whether or not you choose to kill Charisse. Dwayne doesn't want her dead per se, but if you tell him that you killed her, he isn't really that sad about it.
You slept Charisse? She was a bitch, weren't she? This fool falls real hard for them. That's why he gets burnt.
Sparing her also has her showing up later as a stranger encounter, where she asks Nico to help her out with an abusive boyfriend, and the dude's got hands for real.
You won't think this is so funny when you're the one crying like a bitch.
Shit, is you some charity work or something?
Nico also takes down a strip club owned by the Spanish Lords gang, but used to belong to Dwayne's old crew. So he goes to reclaim it for him, giving him some of his own cash flow outside of Playboy's pity handouts. These missions show Dwayne's tragic situation. He lost his woman, his businesses, and his crew's respect while he was imprisoned, and now he's just depressed and grasping to regain a purpose. Nico helps Dwayne out of respect, and genuinely he just relates to the man. As Nico becomes the middleman between Playboy and Dwayne, tensions boil. Playboy sees Dwayne as a washed up has-been, whose presence is cramping Playboy's style and claim to leadership. Dwayne, meanwhile, more and more views Playboy as an ungrateful traitor who is edging him out of the empire that he helped him build. The conflict hits the point of no return when Playboy confides in Nico that Dwayne is becoming a problem that might need dealing with. Not long after, Nico receives a call from Dwayne saying that he thinks Playboy is going to kill him and he wants Nico to take out Playboy for him. Same situation as the McCreary brothers. Nico is put into a situation between two acquaintances and he's forced to pick sides and kill the other. From an analytical view, Playboy X offers Nico $25,000 to kill Dwayne and frames it as doing a favor for business. He argues that Dwayne is stuck in the past and will only drag them down. Playboy's true motive is consolidating power and erasing a person who reminds him of the loyalty that he failed to uphold. Dwayne, on the other hand, doesn't directly offer Nico money, but he appeals to friendship. He is sad that Playboy wants him gone, remarking that he thought of Playboy like a son and says that he can't do it himself for that reason. Dwayne trusts Nico as perhaps his only friend and seems almost ready to accept death if it comes, which tugs at Nico's conscience. So on the surface, the choice is either $25,000 or friendship. If the player chooses to kill Playboy, he confronts him at his loft. Playboy is shocked at Nico's betrayal and tries to run, but Nico corners and shoots him. Playboy's last words highlight his mindset.
People respected me. I made a difference.
You didn't change the game. The game changed you.
After this, Dwayne is grateful. He admits that he didn't truly want to go on living with everyone turning on him, and Nico's choice gave him renewed faith. Dwayne becomes Nico's friend, someone who offers support and a little perk where he can send some muscle to help Nico out in the game. He also gives Nico the deed to Playboy's loft, as he doesn't want to stay there. It'll remind him too much of the kid that he cared for. So realistically, the rewards are better than the $25,000 that Playboy offered. If you decide to kill Dwayne though, first of all, fuck you. But the hit goes a little different. Nico goes to Dwayne's apartment and Dwayne doesn't really run or fight back. Nico reluctantly kills Dwayne, who dies knowing that the world turned a cold shoulder to him. And Nico even turns his head as he pulls the trigger, knowing that he's killing someone that he liked and related to. Calling Playboy after is another reminder that you made the wrong choice here. He calls Nico a cold-blooded murderer and cuts off all ties with Nico, saying that they now have beef since Nico killed his mentor. Playboy keeps his loft and any camaraderie between him and Nico is gone. Nico gets his measly $25,000 and he hits the road.
You nothing but a cold-hearted killer, man. I mean, where's the love? Where's your heart, homie?
Regardless of choice, this storyline adds to Nico's understanding that the criminal life inevitably pits friends against each other, a sobering reality that he's now experienced multiple times over. He's really torn up about it too. There's a unique phone call that you can make to Roman after killing Dwayne to show just how messed up Nico feels about it, and also that Roman may not be the best shoulder to cry on.
Oh, he's treating you like a rich asshole. Who cares? Enjoy yourself. Spend the money on a clean hotel room. The dirty college girl. Call me if you want to hang out afterwards, cousin.
After the McCrearys and the Playboy Dwayne situation, the third thread that runs through Nico's Algonquin chapter is a forced collaboration with the United Liberty Paper Contact, a man never named but effectively a government agent of some three-letter agency that isn't really disclosed, similar to Mike Torino's role in San Andreas. A fun theory is that they are the same guy, but the 3D and HD universes are completely separate. Introduced through Michelle or Karen's betrayal, this guy holds Nico's fate in his hands. He assures Nico that if he cooperates in some national security matters, they will wipe Nico's record clean and help locate that special someone that Nico's been searching for since the war. The ULP contact is calm, cryptic, and manipulating, using Nico's willingness to protect himself and his cousin, and also his eagerness to find this man that he's been looking for. But he doesn't seem outwardly hostile. If anything, he's more realistic in what he's doing, just treating it as business with no hard feelings towards Nico. Even speaking to him in Serbian, saying "Welcome to America," just like the old country, where Nico responds just like it.
Welcome to America. Baskala stara dejava.
Bushka.
He has Nico doing sketchy jobs with just need-to-know information, like assassinating suspected terrorists and destroying Russian mob helicopters. These missions feel somewhat disconnected from Nico's personal story. Nico has been swept into the cloak and dagger world of corrupt government agents, highlighting another facet of Liberty City's power structure. While criminals run the streets, the feds run the shadows, and Nico is caught in between. There's even a mission where little Jacob, showing himself to be a ride or die yet again, flies with Nico in an attack helicopter to shoot down another helicopter. Jacob's presence shows that despite Nico being tangled with the feds, he still relies on his underworld friendships to survive those demands. The ULP contact rewards Nico for his service by giving him his word that he'll get Nico the name of the man who betrayed Nico's unit back in Eastern Europe, the man responsible for the deaths of Nico's friends and one of the main reasons that Nico came to Liberty City. But for now, Nico is left to move on to work in the city. Coincidentally, during this time, Nico gets tipped off to one of the men that he thinks may be this traitor. So without waiting for the ULP contact, he moves forward to his old friend, Florian Kravik. Florian was one of the two survivors, besides Nico, of Nico's army unit that was betrayed. It is through Ray Bacino, an Italian mob middleman that we'll discuss more in the next chapter, that Nico finally gets Florian's location. To Nico's surprise, Florian is not a hardened villain, but a flamboyant gay man living under an alias, Bernie Crane, trying to put the past behind him. Florian, or Bernie, insists that he did not betray the units and is actually happy, if not a little terrified, to see Nico. This meeting is pivotal for Nico's arc. It eliminates one of the two targets of his revenge side quest, narrowing it down to the last man, a man named Darko Breivik, who must be the traitor. It also introduces Bernie's sub-story, where Nico helps Bernie with some personal problems in his life, like protecting Bernie from a violent homophobe that attacks him while he runs in the park, taking down blackmailers of Bernie's boyfriend, Bryce Dawkins, deputy mayor of Liberty City, due to their secret relationship, and having a nice relaxing boat trip with Bernie.
More people want me dead than alive. I'm working for the mafia. The police and the government agency are both on my case. I kill and steal to scrape together a living so that my cousin can fritter it away online and pay off debts. And all the while, people are trying to kill us. What is fun?
Honey, you are stressed.
Where they just so happen to get attacked by Dimitri's Russian goons, who also happen to be the blackmailers as well. Nico, perhaps out of lingering camaraderie from the old days, or just because Bernie is harmless and just happy, acts as his protector. In these moments, we see a softer Nico, bemused by Bernie's dramatic personality, even smiling occasionally at Bernie's optimism. Bernie is a good friend to Nico, and Bryce gives Nico an Infernus sports car out of gratitude for saving his reputation. Bernie also imparts some wisdom. He encourages him to let go of vengeance and find happiness in the now. Bernie's perspective as someone who moved on from the horrors of war by embracing a new identity and love stands in contrast to Nico's grim clinging to the past. This friendship doesn't dramatically alter Nico's path. He still intends to confront Darko, but it plants a seed of an idea that maybe life could offer more than endless revenge. And Bernie's storyline provides rare moments of levity and hope in the narrative, reminding Nico and the player that not everything in Liberty City is cynicism and blood. There are people actually trying to live and love free of crime. In the middle of all this work for other people, Dimitri has not forgotten about the Bellic cousins. Mallory calls up Nico saying that she thinks Roman has been kidnapped, and shortly thereafter, Dimitri texts Nico a picture of Roman tied to a chair with a shotgun to his head. And this definitely gets Nico fired up.
You've crossed the line, Dimitri.
Once Nico gets to the warehouse Roman is held in, he starts gunning down all the goons there, yelling in anger as he fires his gun, eventually saving Roman from his kidnappers and bringing him back home. Dmitri, however, was never there. Roman's gambling problem is what got him in the situation to get caught by the Russians. He actually tells Nico he was snatched up by that biker guy, which is the same biker guy Johnny that Nico worked with under Elizabetta. But we learn more about that in the DLC, The Lost and the Damned. Later on, Roman also calls to let Nico know that he and Mallory are getting married. They've been through enough struggles together. I guess they realize it's time for them to settle down and make it as a family. By the end of the Algonquin chapter, Nico's life is a long list of alliances and enemies. He has integrated himself with the Irish mob, gaining true friends like Packy, and maybe even love with Kate, severed ties with or executed some criminal contacts depending on the choices with Playboy and Dwayne, as well as Francis and Derek, and he kept a foot in the world of shadowy government dealings, and also ruled out Florian as one of the guys that he wanted for betraying him back in the war. He did a lot in Algonquin, but it's time to move on to some more organized crime.
Nico, you are my knight in shining armor. Thank you. I'm sorry our fun day wasn't so very much fun. See you soon.
As Nico has been working with smaller players in Algonquin, he becomes increasingly involved with Liberty City's organized crime elite, particularly the Italian mafia factions in Alderney. One family specifically, the Pegorino crime family, under Don Jimmy Pegorino. The Pegorinos aren't part of Liberty City's storied 5 families, based on the real-life 5 families in La Cosa Nostra. They're a smaller 6th family based in Alderney, desperate for a seat at the commission's table. Alderney, being the game's version of the Jersey suburbs, makes the Pegorinos come off kinda like the DeMeo family in The Sopranos, based on the real-life De Cavalcante family.
5 fucking families. And we got this other pygmy thing over in Jersey.
Actually, after watching that clip, Jimmy kinda looks like Phil Leotardo, played by the late great Frank Vincent in the show, who also voiced Salvatore Leone back in GTA 3, so maybe there is some connections there. Anyway, back to the game. Pegorino's ambition is to make his organization legitimate. He wants the respect of being in the big league. This desperation will soon rope Nico into a dangerous endgame. But first, Nico gets acquainted with Ray Boccino and Phil Bell, 2 key players in Pegorino's circle, and gets caught in the aftermath of a certain diamond fiasco that has been percolating through the city's criminal universe. Ray Boccino is a mob capo working under Pegorino, whom Nico meets via the McCreary's. Ray is the guy that hires the McCreary's for most of their attacks on the Ancelotti crime family. Ray is charming in a sleazy way. He greets Nico as that fucking guy I've been hearing about, and promises to help him find someone, which turned out to be locating Florian or Bernie in exchange for doing some work. Ray's personality is tricky. He tries to appear as a general fixer, the guy who can get you anything, but underneath he really only seems to care about himself, big Dmitri vibes. Ray's missions for Nico initially involve tying up some of Ray's loose ends and earning his trust, like having Nico take out a guy who owes him some money, or as he says,
"Seems this guy does not respect the waste management business."
Ray also sends Nico to retrieve some stolen diamonds that have been stashed in trash bags around the city with a bunch of guys in a garbage truck. These guys end up stealing some of the diamonds from that pickup after this mission, which is a bad move because in the next mission, Ray sends Nico to kill them. These diamonds are a recurring element passed between all the games of GTA 4, involving The Lost and the Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony. What matters in Nico's story is that Ray orchestrates a diamond deal at the Libertonian Museum. Nico, Johnny Klebitz, and some Jewish mobsters attempt to trade some cash for diamonds, when all of a sudden during the deal, a guy who is actually Luis from The Ballad of Gay Tony ambushes and steals the diamonds, and Johnny ends up with the cash, leaving Nico empty-handed and furious. Directly afterward, Ray, who is livid about all this betrayal, orders Nico to go chase down 2 of the members of the Lost MC who he thinks stole his money. He also has Nico go take out the Jewish gangsters as they are calling Ray and blaming him for the fuck up at the museum and threatening to have him killed.
Blaming me for everything! Everything! Even the shit we didn't do!
The kidnapping of Gracie Ancelotti, as I mentioned earlier, was also ordered by Ray, given to Jerry McCreary, who then gave the job to Nico. Gracie is the spoiled daughter of the Ancelotti family's Don, Giovanni Ancelotti. Nico kidnaps Gracie during a car buying test drive, and the McCrearys hold her hostage, planning to trade her to her mobster father in exchange for those elusive diamonds, which the Ancelottis somehow acquired via Luis and Gay Tony's story. Nico spends a chunk of time shuttling Gracie between safe houses to dodge Ancelotti searches and sending ransom pictures out to set up this deal. Eventually, the exchange is arranged. Nico and Packy go to a trash yard to swap Gracie for a bag of diamonds. The exchange, of course, goes tits up when Ray Bolgerin himself shows up, claiming the diamonds, which were actually his to begin with. These diamonds were smuggled into Liberty City under his orders and even came in on the same boat that Nico did, getting baked into a cake by the cook on the ship that we see in the intro cutscene. But of course, we have no context to what's going on. Anyway, after Bolgerin shows up, a big gunfight ensues. In the chaos, Gracie escapes with Tony and Luis, and Nico and Packy kill all of Bolgerin's men, until the guy holding the diamonds just tosses them off the platform that they're on, and the precious gems fall into a passing garbage truck, literally lost in the trash. Nico and Packy escape alive, but empty-handed. The diamond saga that laced through the story ends in absurd futility. Nobody gets the diamonds. Although we later learn at the end of the Ballad of Gay Tony, a homeless man finds them after getting bumped into by Luis, which is a very ironic twist.
He plans to use his new wealth to open a gun shop and liquor store in Vice City.
For Nico, this means all that danger around those diamonds yielded no profit at all. Another bitter pill that crime doesn't often pay, or at least not those who risk the most. After all this mess with Ray, Nico refused to do any more work with him and instead started to meet with Phil Bell. Phil is Pegorino's right-hand man, and he and Nico have a respectful rapport. Phil likes that Nico is efficient and not overly flashy. Together, they handle a few of Pegorino's business ventures, as he tries to grow his outfit. He has Nico steal a truckload of heroin from the triads for Pegorino, making this like the 10th crime organization Nico has pissed off in this game. This heroin is notably the same product that once belonged to the Lost MC, another contraband tying the DLC stories together, and it is also Pegorino's golden goose. He plans to sell it and finally earn the wealth and favor that he craves. With the heroin in hand, Pegorino decides to meet Nico face to face and give him some work. He wants Nico to watch over a meeting that he has coming up with the Pavano crime family, one of the Liberty City 5 families of the Commission. He wants to present some cash to them as a tribute to get a seat at this table with the big families. However, this meeting is an ambush and turns into a shootout, slapping any ideas that Pegorino had at joining the Commission down. So now Pegorino goes on the offensive, having Nico ambush Pavano's men at a cash pickup and chasing them back to a car showroom and killing a bunch of them there, essentially creating a mob war. Meanwhile, Phil has work for Nico, mostly involving more drugs. They ambush an Ancelotti shipyard, stealing boats that just arrived from Vice City with a bunch of smuggled cocaine. And then Nico goes to kill an Ancelotti underboss named Chubby Charlie, who's going to tell the Commission that the Pegorinos are behind this boat theft. Nico and Phil go to move the heroin they stole from the triads to a more secure location, as some heat has been coming down on them, and sure enough, the feds have been watching it, even though Phil's nephew Frankie was supposed to keep an eye on things. Once they get there, they get ambushed by Noose and the FIB, leading to a car chase through Alderney until they get the heroin to a safer lockup after losing their tail. Pegorino finds out who snitched on the heroin, and it was actually his own adopted son and bodyguard, Anthony Corrado, who after Jimmy calls and threatens to kill him has a heart attack. But he doesn't die, so he sends Nico to the hospital to finish the job.
Oh, it looks like I messed something up. Sorry about that, Anthony. My arm!
By now, Pegorino is paranoid. He still thinks that there's a rat. He assumes it's either Phil or Ray, and for some reason or another, he decides that Ray needs to die. As far as I'm aware, there's no evidence that he was a rat, but paranoia has killed several people in this game so far, so what's one more? Nico follows Ray until he stops at a gas station and then takes him and his men out. During this time in Alderney, Nico also gets contacted by the UL paper contact and is enlisted to work for John Gravelli, the Don of the Gambetti crime family. He's an old man dying in bed and he's having some trouble in his last days, struggling with his legacy, so he has Nico do some good in his name, mostly stopping other gangs from taking over what he's worked so hard to accomplish. A politician is coming to Liberty City to give a speech on Russian organized crime being a threat to the city, and he is assuming Nico's buddy Dimitri will have a a problem with that, so he sends Nico to be his private security to make sure that he makes it to City Hall. He then has Nico go after a Korean counterfeiter that is no good for the economy. The same Korean that Nico helped smuggle the cash into the city under Derek McCreary's orders. And finally, he has Nico disrupt a drug deal between the Ancillatis and the Russians by destroying all the vans that the drugs are stashed in. After doing this work for Gravelli and UL Paper by proxy, Nico finally gets the call that he's been waiting for. ULP has tracked down Darko Breivik and is bringing him to Liberty City. Nico and Roman drive to the airport to receive the man, and it's an intense ride with 1,000 thoughts running through Nico's head. This is the man who betrayed his trust, killed his comrades, and indirectly set Nico on this path of bitterness. When they present Darko to Nico, bound, pathetic, and trembling, Nico is taken aback. Darko is a scared junkie, whimpering for death or drugs. At first, he doesn't even recognize Nico, and then when he doesn't even know why Nico is mad. The events that scarred Nico for life had no impact on this man, or at the very least, his drug use has erased it all. Nico also asks him how much he was offered to betray them, and he says $1,000, and Nico's furious at this, but Darko then asks Nico how much he charges to kill a man.
How much? 1,000.
You killed my friends for $1,000.
How much do you charge to kill someone?
You ruined me, you fuck!
It's not a subtle message. Darko Breivik has a similar name and appearance to Nico Bellic. Some of Nico's earlier missions have him wipe out whole crews of people for the same amount of money that Darko was paid. Nico killed a lot of people just to gain the power to choose how it ends for Darko, to have him delivered to his feet. Nico will feel better if he spares him, but the opportunity to have this feel-good moment was not free. If Nico kills Darko, he'll feel empty, and he'll give Darko what he wants. And maybe that's what they both deserve. One could argue there's more hypocrisy in sparing him and accepting praise from friends for not killing this guy. On the other hand, if Nico does want to stop being a killer, he has to start somewhere. It's the ultimate choice of vengeance versus mercy. The player can have Nico execute Darko in cold blood or walk away and spare him. Regardless of the choice, Nico's reaction is one of disappointment and emptiness.
This is the moment you've been waiting for so long, Nico. What do you mean you don't know how you feel?
I mean, I don't know. I feel empty, okay? I feel empty.
This is a pivotal moment. Nico's personal mission, aside from protecting his cousin, is now concluded, and it's profoundly anticlimactic for him. It underscores one of GTA 4's central messages. The cycle of revenge is futile. It doesn't resurrect the dead or undo any trauma. If anything, it can worsen the survivor's anguish. Nico stares into the figurative abyss and realizes that it's still just an abyss. From here on, what's keeping Nico going is less clear. Perhaps Roman's upcoming wedding, perhaps Kate's influence, or perhaps simply momentum. But he's dug himself too deep into the city and he still has to look over his shoulder for the Russians that are out to get him. And the fact that he's been continuously stepping on their toes in other people's names is not helping them forget him and his cousin. Honestly, if Nico didn't want revenge on Darko so badly, he and Roman could have actually laid low and Dmitri would have lost interest in them. He has much bigger moves going on and he would not care about some cab company owner and his cousin. But it's too late to lay low, and by now, most of the city is dead and Nico's circle of enemies has narrowed down to two main antagonists, Ray Bulgarin and Dmitri Raskolov, who have somewhat merged forces. Bulgarin remains at large, a wild card. He showed up to ambush the diamond deal with the kidnapped Gracie, but we don't really know what happened to him after that. And ever since the failed warehouse ambush, Dmitri has been busy climbing the underworld ladder, and his path finally crosses Nico's once again. Dmitri has a potential buyer of Pegorino's heroin, and Pegorino, of course, wants his top guy, Nico, to help broker this deal. Pegorino knows Nico has bad blood with Dmitri, so he awkwardly tries to convince Nico to be a professional and let bygones be bygones for the sake of money. Pegorino's sort of desperate here. This may be his last chance at getting in with the commission, or at the very least getting him a massive payday. Nico obviously tries to turn him down, but Pegorino insists, very sternly.
No, you listen, you dumb immigrant fuck. I ain't asking you, I'm telling you, do this! Get over your principles. These guys don't hold grudges.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Nico leaves and he calls some people to get their opinion. First, he calls Roman, who kind of agrees with Pegorino. Let the past stay in the past and work together for the sake of money. When he brings up that Dimitri burned his apartment and his business and kidnapped him, he says that, well, now I got a better apartment. So whether Roman just doesn't want any more beef because his wedding is coming up, or he just wants a bunch of cash is very unclear, but he does tell Nico that he knows where Dimitri is, and he begs his cousin to make the deal. He even texts Nico after this call saying that they can fly a private jet down to Vice City after the deal and think of the honeymoon that him and Mallory can have with all this cash. Nico then calls Kate. She doesn't know all the details of what's going on, but Nico gives her a vague overview, and she tells Nico that she wouldn't respect him if he compromised on his values and what he believes in just for some money. And this all builds to GTA 4's final choice, deal or revenge. You must decide if Nico agrees to Pegorino's plan and works with Dimitri for the heroin sale, the deal path, or if Nico refuses and decides to get revenge on Dimitri once and for all, sabotaging the deal. It's a tough choice, and the most impactful one in the game as it changes the way the story ends entirely. If Nico chooses to do the deal, he and Phil head down to pick up the payment for the heroin from the buyers while Dimitri meets with their representatives at another location to hand over the heroin, being smart by keeping the money and drugs separate to avoid anyone taking over the deal. However, once he and Phil get into the buyer's compound, Dimitri calls and tells them that he has killed the buyer's representatives and will keep the heroin for himself, leaving Nico and Phil in enemy territory. But he tells them that they can go ahead and get the money from inside so everyone wins. Easier said than done, as Nico and Phil have to shoot their way through a ton of guys and chase down a truck in order to get the cash, but in the end they do. Pegorino gets the money at the end of the day, so he doesn't really care that Dimitri soured the deal. And Nico seems to be okay with this as well, telling Phil on the ride back that he won't go after Dimitri, he's just going to enjoy his money and go to his cousin's wedding. And after this, Nico does attend Roman's wedding. He goes to buy a suit and he gets ready for the day, calling Roman, who is ecstatic about the deal being done and having a bunch of cash and ready to celebrate. And also Nico calls Kate asking if she's going to the wedding, but after he tells her that he decided to work with this guy, she tells him no, as she doesn't want to be around him.
I can't believe you could care about money that much.
Well, we do what we can to survive, Kate. Are you coming to Roman's wedding?
I don't think so, Nico. I don't want to be around you right now.
As Roman and Mallory walk out of the ceremony, all their friends from throughout the game are there celebrating with them, until a hitman shows up behind Nico and tells him he has a gift from Dmitry Rascalov and tries to shoot him. Nico wrestles the gun away from him and the gun fires off a few times before he can turn the gun on the assassin and take him out. Shortly after the guy falls, Mallory starts screaming for Roman. Nico turns to see his cousin laid out on the ground, dead, with everyone freaking out and crying over him. Nico turns back to the assassin and unloads the gun into his corpse, with no emotion on his face. You can tell he's seeing every decision that he'd made, every chance that he had to go after Dmitri, taunting him, with rage taking over as the gun runs empty and then he just starts kicking the guy. He made a deal and thought that bygones would be bygones, but Dmitri can't let loose ends exist, and now Roman is dead. And Nico could have stopped it by just sticking to his morals.
They told me to leave it. I left it.
Nico, get up.
Jacob pulls him off of the guy and tells him to leave before the cops show up, and he will look for Dmitri and call Nico when he has some information. The next day, Nico wakes up and realizes what just happened is not a dream.
Roman, I'm so sorry, cousin.
Soon enough, Jacob calls saying that he's seen Dmitri and Pegorino hanging out more and more, and he found some of Pegorino's men and he's going to follow them back to where he assumes Dmitri is. Nico meets up with him and they tail them back to this abandoned casino in Westdyke. Nico tells Jacob to stay out of it as he needs no more blood on his hands, except the blood of these bastards standing between him and Dmitri. Nico guns through this abandoned building, chasing down Dmitri. Eventually he comes across Dmitri and Pegorino arguing in a stairwell, before Dmitri shoots Pegorino in the face, saying that he didn't work this hard to share the spoils of victory.
I didn't work this hard to share the spoils of a victory. Goodbye.
This chase continues, getting real theatrical. Dimitri hops in a helicopter and retreats as Nico chases him down in a speedboat until Jacob shows up again in his own helicopter, and Nico jumps from the boat to the helicopter to continue the chase of Dimitri, firing rockets off the whole time. It's really dope shit. But eventually the helicopter gets shot down over Happiness Island, and Nico finishes the pursuit onto Dimitri, finishing him off with whatever gun he so chooses.
Welcome to America.
You little lads! I'm not rolling!
Speak English. You're a strange man. You killed your best friend. You betrayed everyone who ever came in contact with you. You killed my cousin. I guess the survival of the fittest thing really meant a lot.
Come on, Nick, come on, get out of here, let's go. Come on. Go on. Come on, let's go.
Roman never hurt anyone.
The game ends with somber music, with the camera panning up behind the Statue of Happiness, looking at the skyline of the city during a heavy thunderstorm, with Nico's final quote being, "So this is what the dream feels like."
So this is what the dream feels like. This is the victory we longed for.
You can, of course, play the game after the credits roll, and you'll get some phone calls as you do. You get a call from both Brucey and Kate, sharing their condolences over the death of Roman, but most importantly, you get a call from Mallory, who tells Nico that she's pregnant, and her son will never meet his father. Another hard hit to an already tragic ending.
Thank you, Nico. I know you're trying, but a child without a father has a lot to worry about. Trust me on that one.
But of course, this only happened because Nico took the deal. So let's rewind and see what changes if Nico decides to take revenge on that scumbag Dimitri. Nico finds out that Dimitri is on the platypus before the heroin deal is supposed to go down. So instead of meeting with Phil to head to the meetup, Nico goes right to Dimitri and shoots every last henchman that he has aboard the ship, until cornering Dimitri and killing that vile man once and for all. I ended up killing him with an RPG, but you could also do a unique execution on him while he pleads for his life.
I should have put you out of your misery a long time ago. Goodbye, Dimitri.
Dimitri dies on the same ship that Nico came into the city on. Things, I guess, came full circle. Nico calls Roman to tell him what happened, and Roman is pissed as there's no money to be had now, but he tells Nico to go get a suit and be ready for the wedding either way. Kate, however, is happier with Nico's decision this time, and she decides to join him as a date to Roman's wedding, where they reminisce on the way to the church that this is where her brother's funeral took place. So some happy memories for sure. Depending on the brother, I guess. The wedding goes the same, but during the celebration outside, instead of a Russian assassin coming to kill Nico, there's instead a car with an angry Pegorino that drives by, with him yelling and shooting an AK-47 at the crowd. The gunfire misses everyone except dear Kate McCreary. Nico kneels over her crying as the crowd circles around them. Nico says that she told me to leave it, and he thought that he had, similar to what he said in the case when Roman dies.
Told me to leave it. I thought I had. I thought it was over.
And then Nico wakes up the next day in the apartment, furious.
Damn!
Jacob calls Nico the next day saying that he spotted Pegorino's guys, similar to the other ending, and the pursuit of them ends at the abandoned casino all the same. Only this time, Roman is along for the ride as well, for moral support of course. On the stairwell where Dimitri kills Pegorino in the other ending, Pegorino is there alone, yelling at Nico, calling him a backstabbing scumbag. It then turns into another theatrical chase. Nico rides a dirt bike along the shore, chasing down Pegorino in a speedboat in the water, until Nico does a sick jump up the ramp to get onto Jacob's helicopter to continue the chase of the boat. Both vehicles end up crashing into Happiness Island like the other pursuits, and Nico chases Pegorino down, gunning him down once and for all.
I told you to leave me alone.
I give the orders here. Me!
You're not looking so good there, Jimmy.
Screw you.
What the fuck did she ever do to you?
I wanted you, you immigrant dipshit.
Big talk. You want to know something funny?
Not really.
The commission The old families? I know some of those guys. And they thought you were a fat fucking joke.
Whatever.
A joke!
Cousin!
Yeah.
You did it.
Really? I don't know. What did I do?
But we're done. Now we can start making money. Freely.
I suppose so.
We won, man. We won!
The game ends in the same somber music as the camera pans up to the front of the Statue of Happiness this time, with no thunderstorm to be seen, with Nico's final quote being the same as the other ending. Nico also gets some calls after the credits roll. Packy calls all tore up that his baby sister is dead, she never hurt a soul in her life, and it's just not fair. And Roman calls to tell Nico that Mallory is pregnant, and he also says that if it's a girl, they'll name it Kate. Both the deal and the revenge arcs reinforce that violence begets violence, and no one in Nico's line of work gets a truly happy ending. In each scenario, both Dimitri and Pegorino die, but the personal cost to Nico changes. The deal ending punishes Nico for compromising on his principles for money. He loses his cousin, effectively his moral anchor and his only true family in the city. The revenge ending punishes Nico for sticking to his principles in a violent way. He spares Roman, but he loses Kate, symbolizing this loss of a chance at a normal life. He's gone too far and he doesn't deserve to live a normal life after all this violence, and Kate is what that represented. It's a tragedy either way. Nico Bellic, the war-torn, broken soul, suffers yet another devastating trauma on top of all that he's endured. What remains for Nico after the events of the story remains uncertain. In the deal ending, he has a bunch of cash, but he lost his cousin. Maybe he uses that money to invest like Roman did, or gamble. Or he raises Roman's child with Mallory's help and brings them up well with a bunch of cash. In the revenge ending, he has Roman and the prospect of a new family business, or just caring for Roman's child as an uncle, but he loses a big payday and he also loses Kate permanently. But in both, Nico is scarred. Perhaps the one glimmer of redemption that he has at long last is a broken cycle of revenge in a sense. He killed the men who wronged him, Dimitri, Pegorino, and Bulgarin indirectly, and confronted Darko without carrying on that feud. All of his old grudges are settled. Whether that brings peace or just emptiness is left to the player's imagination. Nico has to live with the question, was it worth it? The final line about the dream suggests that Nico realizes the futility. The American dream that he chased was a lie, a victory that feels hollow when weighed against all the people that he lost along the way. Grand Theft Auto 4 tells an immigrant story through Nico Bellic's eyes, and it never lets you forget how unglamorous that story really is. This isn't a crime fantasy, it's closer to a slow tragedy, the kind where you can see the ending coming and you just can't do anything to stop it. What makes the game's cast so memorable is that none of them exist just to give Nico jobs. Roman pulls him into Liberty City with promises that he can't keep, driven by genuine love wrapped in genuine delusion. Dimitri smiles and talks about playing it smart, and then stabs you the moment that it's convenient. Faustin is terrifying not because he's calculating, but because he isn't. He's a paranoid, coked up wreck who's convinced himself that he's the only sane man in the room. Manny wants to be a hero so bad that he's turned it into a performance. Elisabetta is crumbling under pressure and she can barely hold it together. The McCrearys are a family eating themselves alive. Playboy X and Dwayne represent the same dream, pulling in opposite directions. And Pegorino is what happens when a man mistakes desperation for ambition. Every one of them tests Nico differently and every one of them leaves a mark. Running underneath all of it is the American dream, and GTA 4 is ruthless about what it does to that idea. Roman chased it like it was a sure thing. Nico came hoping that it might let him outrun his his past. Neither of them got what they came for. The city handed them something uglier, a place where, as Nico put it, capitalism is a dirty business, and everyone, including the government dangling your freedom in front of you, is using you for something. By the end, it doesn't matter whether Nico's pockets are full or empty, he's standing in the wreckage either way. So this is what the American dream feels like. This is the victory we longed for. That line lands like a punch because it isn't quite a statement. It's somewhere between a question and just giving up. But the game isn't completely dark. It leaves you with something. Little Jacob stays loyal through everything, no conditions attached. Packy feels like a real friend, the kind forged through shared bad decisions. And Roman, in the revenge ending, Roman survives, Kate dies, and somehow Roman's wife being pregnant cuts through all of it. New life in the wreckage. It's not a happy ending, but it's not nothing either. Nico hasn't gone hollow. If anything, the whole experience proves the opposite. He feels things too much, and that capacity to care is exactly what keeps hurting him the most. And that's what makes him a tragic hero rather than just a criminal protagonist. He's not a saint and he's not a monster. He's someone shaped by war and loss who arrived into a new country genuinely trying to do better. And he got pulled under anyway. The pattern repeats itself so consistently, it starts to feel like law. Trust someone, get betrayed, take your revenge, feel nothing. GTA 4 builds that cycle carefully and then just lets you sit in it. What stays with you after the credits roll isn't any particular mission or set piece, it's the realization that Nico's biggest fight was never against Dimitri or Pegorino or anyone else. It was against the version of his life that he believed was still possible. Liberty City answered that one clearly enough. And the fact that it hurts to admit it, that's why Nico's story still holds up as one of the most genuinely devastating things that the video game medium has produced. It's such a depressing story, and by and large the deepest and best in the Grand Theft Auto series. When GTA 4 came out in 2008, the first thing that people noticed was just how real it felt. Not realistic in a sterile sense, real in a way that made you stop and just exist in the city for a little while. A lot of that came down to the engine. Rage compared with Euphoria physics systems meant that the world behaved like it actually had some weight behind it. Car crashes felt different every time. Shootouts never played out the same way twice. Nothing looked canned or pre-baked. And then there was the details so small that you almost missed them. Nico adjusting his footing on an uneven curb, reaching up to brush some rain off his jacket mid-walk. Nobody announced those touches. You just kind of catch them out of the corner of your eye and you feel like the world gets a little more solid around you. Driving was completely rethought too. San Andreas let you throw a car around like a toy. 4 made you actually reckon with the vehicle, the weight of it, the momentum, the way that it pushed back when you tried to brake late into a corner. Some people bounced off that immediately. Others found that it clicked into place and suddenly no other driving felt right anymore. The city itself felt inhabited in a way that open worlds rarely did at the time. NPCs had routines. They talked to each other. They reacted when chaos broke out nearby. Liberty City wasn't just a map that you moved through, it had its own rhythm, its own life running underneath everything that you were doing. That was new, and it set a bar that the genre spent years trying to clear. The technology was impressive, but what people kept coming back to was the story. GTA had always had characters, memorable ones even, but they existed to be fun, to move you from mission to mission, to make you laugh. Nico Bellic was built for something different. He's an Eastern European ex-soldier who's seen things that he can't unfold himself from. Crossing an ocean on a half-formed hope that Liberty City might offer him something better. He's not a gangster who wants to be a king, he's a tired man who wants to be done. With his past, with violence, with the version of himself the war made. That was a genuinely unusual thing to center a GTA game on. The story earns its weight through the quiet moments as much as the loud ones. Nico's backstory surfaces gradually. Wartime betrayal, guilt that he's never been able to put down, the specific loneliness of trying to belong somewhere that doesn't quite have room for you. The game keeps asking underneath all the action whether someone who's done the things that Nico has done can ever actually get out, whether that kind of life leads anywhere worth going. Earlier Grand Theft Auto games weren't really interested in that question. They were interested in being a blast, which they were. GTA 4 wanted to be something that would sit with you after you put the controller down. Rockstar dropped the Hollywood imitations, skipped the parodies and the pop culture references, and just told an original story with real emotional stakes. Critics noticed. The response wasn't just great game, it was that the writing represented a genuine leap forward for what video game storytelling could be. And looking back, that's pretty hard to argue with. It's kind of hard to believe that San Andreas and GTA 4 came from the same series. While Vice City and San Andreas and the Stories games all kind of had semi-deep stories and kind of good storytelling, it was all very surface level. There was no deeper themes to be explored, there was no giant tragedies, just kind of plot points that drove you to do different things. It's easy to see how those games laid the foundation for what GTA 4 was, but it's also easy to realize that this is where the writers from Rockstar really wanted to put their effort. And with the new generation of hardware, they could put that effort to good use and display what they were trying to do. And for that reason, GTA 4 is still the most polarizing game in the series. It might be the most polarizing game in Rockstar's catalog, but the influence from 4 didn't stay contained to GTA 4. Red Dead Redemption came out 2 years later and it carried that same core belief, that a game could be built around a morally complicated protagonist in a world that felt genuinely alive. And GTA 5 also took the reins in telling a deeper story as well, by adding multiple protagonists and having several different stories going on at once, something that they kind of tested the waters with GTA 4 in the episodes that came out later. Red Dead Redemption 2 pushed the whole philosophy further than most people thought that the medium could sustain. The thread running through all of it traces back to what GTA 4 established. Outside of Rockstar, the effect was just as real. Open world games in the late 2000s and into the 2010s were reaching for the same standard. That level of environmental detail, that sense of a world with its own internal logic, that blend of story and gameplay that produced moments which actually meant something. GTA 4 had shown that it was possible and that audiences would respond to it. And that's not really a small thing to prove. Critics and developers looking back have called it a new benchmark, a flawed but significant leap towards what the medium was going to become. Both parts of that are true. It had real problems, and it also opened something up that couldn't be closed again. A demonstration that open world games didn't have to choose between being fun and being substantial. They could be both, and players would show up for it. GTA had been a controversy magnet for years by the time that 4 came out, so the backlash wasn't surprising. The scale of it kind of was though. Even before the game released, the familiar critics were already circling. Florida attorney Jack Thompson, who had spent years campaigning against Rockstar's games, tried to block the sale of GTA 4 to minors and ended up in a legal fight with Take-Two over it. Lawsuits were filed, countersuits followed, and eventually both sides dropped their cases. Thompson still kept up the pressure. At one point, he claimed a corrupt lawyer character in the game was modeled after him and threatened legal action if it wasn't removed. Later, he sent a bizarre letter to Take-Two's chairman Strauss Zelnick's mother, calling the game a murder simulator and comparing Zelnick's upbringing to the Hitler Youth. New York officials had their own objections once the first trailer revealed Liberty City's inspiration. City Councilman Peter Vallone Jr. criticized the idea of portraying violent crime in a version of New York City, comparing it to setting Halo in Disneyland. Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly called it despicable to glamorize violence against officers, and Mayor Michael Bloomberg's office publicly distanced itself from the game. Some critics in the game industry pointed to the obvious counter-argument. New York City had been the setting for countless violent movies and TV shows without drawing the same outrage. Once the game actually released though, the focus shifted. The violence was the usual target, but this time critics found a more specific flashpoint: the ability to drive drunk. Nico can leave a bar intoxicated and get behind the wheel, and the game lets it happen. Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out hard against it, demanding that the ESRB assign an adults-only rating and calling on Rockstar to pull the game from shelves entirely. Their position was pretty blunt. Drunk driving is not a game and it's not a joke. And New York City responded to this, with transit authorities pulling GTA 4 ads off their buses under the public pressure. Rockstar didn't apologize for this though. They responded that their audience was sophisticated enough to understand what they were engaging with, and that a single mechanic shouldn't define the whole work. It was a reasonable argument, but it didn't quiet anyone down. Media figures piled on as well. Radio host Glenn Beck used the game as an example of how violent games were supposedly training kids to be killers, even incorrectly claiming that players could attack police with a chainsaw, a weapon that doesn't even exist in GTA 4.
He can either light that police officer on fire or cut him in half with a chainsaw. This is entertainment?
Critics of this pointed out the obvious, that the game was rated for adults, and the argument itself sounded like one of the exaggerated satire radio shows that were in the game. But we all know that counterpoint is kinda bullshit, because I was under 18 when I played the game, and I know a lot of people were as well. GTA 5 was the only one that I was actually old enough to play when it came out. And then there were the real-world incidents that always seemed to get attached to controversial games. In New York, a group of teenagers arrested for robbery reportedly told police that they had been inspired by Grand Theft Auto. In Bangkok, an 18-year-old murdered a taxi driver while attempting to steal the vehicle, claiming that he wanted to see if hijacking a cab was as easy as it was in the game. Thailand responded by banning the game entirely. Years later, a tragic case in Louisiana involved an 8-year-old who shot his grandmother after reportedly playing GTA 4. As with so many of these stories, the game became the headline even when the circumstances were far more complicated. What's worth noting is that a separate, quieter controversy was running alongside all of this, one coming from inside the fanbase rather than outside. Some longtime GTA players felt that the series had lost something in the shift towards realism. The tone was too heavy and the fun was too scarce. The whole thing too self-serious for what Grand Theft Auto was supposed to be. Others pushed back and argued the opposite, that 4 had finally given the franchise genuine artistic weight. Both debates were happening at the same time, aimed at the same game from completely different directions, and that's a strange position for any piece of entertainment to be in, and probably not an accident. Needless to say, it wasn't a clean launch by any measure. On console, Liberty City was pushing the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 about as hard as those machines could be pushed. And it showed. Frame rate would dip in the busiest areas, not enough to break the game, but enough to remind you that the hardware was struggling to keep up. The PC version was a different story. Released in December of 2008, it became one of the more notorious ports of that era. People with high-end machines were reporting serious performance problems despite meeting or exceeding the recommended specs. Reviewers called it unrefined and borderline lazy. It really just wasn't a good port, and Rockstar knew it. Even today, you still gotta do some patches to get it to running right. What's really telling though is that none of that stopped people from playing the game. Players modded it, worked around it, and tolerated frame drops on console because the experience underneath was worth it. And I think that says something. On the critical and commercial side, there's really not much to qualify. GTA 4 landed with a 98 on Metacritic, which put it among the highest rated games of all time. Game of the Year awards piled up. The response wasn't just positive, it was the kind of reception that defines a generation of games, similar to San Andreas on the PlayStation 2. The sales numbers were just as blunt. $310 million in the first 24 hours, $500 million by the end of the first week, over 28 million copies sold, somewhere in the range of $2 billion in revenue. Those were entertainment industry records at the time, and not just gaming records. That commercial success had a direct effect on what Rockstar did next. The budget for GTA 5 reportedly doubled what 4 had cost to make. The world got bigger and the ambitions got larger. Red Dead Redemption 2 became one of the most expensive games ever produced. All of that traces back to what GTA 4 proved was possible, both artistically and financially. It set the ceiling higher, and Rockstar spent the next decade trying to reach that. The sales numbers and the Metacritic score are part of the legacy. The technical achievements are part of it too, but what GTA 4 actually left behind was something harder to quantify. It was a game about the American dream, specifically about what that dream looks like when you get close enough to see it clearly. Nico came to Liberty City carrying a version of hope, the immigrant's belief that a fresh start was possible, if you could just get somewhere new. The city answered that pretty honestly. Debt, crime, people who want to use you, and a cycle of violence that keeps demanding more than it gives back. The revenge that Nico spends the whole game pursuing, when it finally arrives, it doesn't feel like anything worth the cost. That weight is present in every part of the story. Every act of violence accumulates. The losses that hit the hardest are the ones that you can't stop, regardless of what you choose. The game doesn't let you feel clean about any of it, which was a deliberate choice, and an unusual one for a blockbuster release in 2008. What Rockstar proved with GTA 4 was that an open world game could carry genuine moral weight without collapsing underneath it. That you could build something entertaining and also have it mean something. That's not a common combination. And it influenced everything that came after, in Rockstar's own catalog and across the genre more broadly. Nico's story doesn't end well, not really, regardless of which ending you get, but it ends honestly, and in a medium that often rewards you with victory and closure. That honesty is what stuck with people. Nobody truly wins in Liberty City. And somehow, after all these years, that's exactly why we keep going back.